Okay.
Roll call
So
vote.
moved.
Second.
Will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Ms. Green? Ms. Berry?
Okay, having a quorum of the Board of Selectmen present, I'll call to order the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, July 25th, 2016. And we are opening our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'd ask all to stand and participate as you wish. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first item on the agenda is citizens' concerns, and this is an opportunity for citizens to speak on matters other than what's on the agenda tonight. If you have an issue you want to take up on the agenda, we can talk about it at that point, but if you have other issues you want to talk about, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we're moving to the chairman's update. I may have mentioned this before, but we did get a letter from Mass DOT, a project eligibility notification that we're eligible for federal aid highway funding for the Kelly's Corner infrastructure improvements. We're a long way from actually getting funding, but we're eligible for funding. There's a lengthy process to actually get on the list that eventually leads to funding. First, we have to put together the design documents that the town has to pay for before we're eligible for the actual construction funding. We're having a meeting of a town committee on August 10th to review the designer selection process. I think those bids have already come in, Steve, is that it? And will be an RFP, right? Okay, for architects or engineers, and so we'll be reviewing those and going through the criteria and selecting the most appropriate response to those requests for proposals. There has been talk in town about recognizing our public safety personnel, police and firefighters, particularly in light of the recent events nationally regarding police officers in Baton Rouge and elsewhere. And let's see, we certainly want to make police officers and firefighters aware that we regard their service very highly. They're out there protecting us 24/7. You never know when you're a police officer what consequences might be if you make stops or interact with citizens. Our police force, we are particularly fortunate under the guidance of Chief Widmeyer that they respond to citizens' concerns with empathy and professionalism. I'm not aware of any particular incidents of complaints of excessive force or other complaints of the way police have responded. The principal issues that I understand the police respond to in town are domestic violence and mental health issues. So very sensitive situations that require a highly trained and again, empathetic police department that can deal with those issues. We've learned from these national incidents how inadequate the services are to deal with people who have mental and emotional problems, and the police are really the first responders that have to make those encounters. So we certainly appreciate our police officers and thank them for all their hard work protecting us. We received an email from a citizen, Stuart Ellis, who's suggesting we honor the police and firefighters by placing small flags in front of the public safety building. These are 8-inch by 12-inch small flags on wooden sticks. There are some already planted there. We want to certainly control where they get put. There is in front of the 9/11 monument at the public safety facility an area of ornamental grasses. So that's the appropriate place if you want to come down and put a flag to honor our police officers. And that would keep it away from the mowing section to protect the flags. Mr. Ellis we've asked Mr. Ellis to also remove the flags when they become deteriorated to a point where they need to be retired. So you're welcome to come down and present that honor to the police officers. Okay, at 7:10, I'm going to read the notice of hearing for a public hearing that we have scheduled. The Acton Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on July 25th, 2016 at 7:10 p.m. in the Francis Faulkner Hearing Room in Town Hall, 472 Main Street, Acton, for an order to show cause to determine a dangerous dog housed at 14 Strawberry Hill Road, Acton. The documentation concerning this public hearing can be inspected before the public hearing at Town Hall during normal business hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. So we will commence that hearing as soon as we finish with the reports. Once again, remind people that the Concord Water Project hearing for Concord, Town of Concord's application for a site plan special permit to build their new water treatment facility out near Nagog Pond has been continued until September 12th, and that hearing will be held on that date. I attended the Discovery Woods grand opening last Sunday. The town was well represented there. It's a fantastic play space, treehouse play space, accessible to children of all abilities. So if you have young children or if you're young at heart, you should really make a visit to the Discovery Woods play space. The town, of course, committed community preservation funds to the tune of $150 grand to help construct that play space, and we are recognized on a plaque that's on display along with other funders of that. And you know, the CPC has been around since 2002 in town. We've funded numerous projects, historic projects. Exchange Hall was preserved, Jones Tavern was preserved, the Jenks Library and Hosmer House was preserved, the Palmer House over on Great Road was preserved. We preserved the Davis Monument in the town center where our patriots are buried. We've done affordable housing through the Community Preservation Act funding. The Housing Authority has received numerous funding to keep their properties up to grade, and recreation projects we funded throughout town. Nara Park, the picnic pavilion, the music structure that's at Nara, the Miracle Field that kids with disabilities use are all funded in part by the Community Preservation Committee. The skate park, the lights at the tennis courts, the computerized lights at the tennis courts. People can play after dark on the AB campus, and the Elm Street basketball courts all were funded with community preservation funds. Open space has been a huge benefit to the town with community preservation funds, the most prominent being the Coet Farm in South Acton that is preserved forever as conservation land and is still being farmed as it has been for the last couple hundred years. Wright Hill, the town purchased last year, a spectacular piece of property in West Acton. If you get a chance to walk that property, you can see Mount Wachusett from the top of the hill. Many other open space projects, so the CPC has contributed dramatically to the town over the 14 years, I guess, that we've been funding projects through the Community Preservation Act. And that completes my report. I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. We'll be appearing in front of the Department of Energy Resources tentatively August 11th to have a hearing on our electric aggregation plan that we had a presentation on from our consultant 2 weeks ago. In addition, I did a TV show with Marlena Patton of Peregrine Energy to kind of explain aggregation that is I think, continuing to be airing on ActonTV. Tomorrow, all day, we are doing a Fire Chief Assessment Center to fill the position that was vacated when Chief Feuder retired. We have 3 internal candidates. We'll be running through the paces. The sports pavilion up at Nara, the first gifted house has been placed on its foundation. The second foundation will be being worked on shortly. And that's my report.
Okay, I just had one other item that Steve's report reminded me of. We have started the Acton Agenda, a TV show on the Acton Government Access Program, where before every meeting of the Board of Selectmen, we are rotating among selectmen to go over the agenda and explain what the items will be and what the discussion will be about those and what the selectmen do and consider and all those issues. Steve and I did the first one before the last meeting. This meeting, Selectwoman Adachi and Steve taped the show. It gets taped on Thursday or early Friday and runs Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and on Monday before the meeting. It's also on DVR, so you can watch the program at any time, and people are interested in asking questions. If you go to the ActonTV.org website, there is both an email and a Twitter feed that you can ask questions, and the Selectmen will be prepared to answer those as part of the Acton Forum TV show, or Acton Agenda TV show. So we invite you to tune in. So with that, we're going to move on to the dangerous dog hearing. Ask the police officers who are here, who gave us their reports, to come forward and explain the basis for why we're here tonight and what happened, and then we'll give anybody who's here, either the owner of the dogs or any members of the community who might be here to speak about this issue, an opportunity to say their piece.
Good evening. I'm Tack Palmer. I'm the Acton Animal Control Officer. I just wrote a brief statement. I'm here tonight to present you for the need for a dangerous dog hearing for a dog owned by Elizabeth Halloran.
Hold on, is this a police officer with you?
Officer Joe Wakeham.
Okay, and is anyone going to testify on behalf of either the dog or citizens who live in the neighborhood? So we're going to ask you all to stand and raise your right hand and get sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth on this matter?
I do.
Mr. Palmer.
Okay. I'm here tonight to present to you a need for a dangerous dog hearing for a dog owned by Elizabeth Halloran at 14 Strawberry Hill Road, Apartment 14. The police have responded to numerous incidents involving Miss Halloran's dog, Evie. The first such event occurred on May 21st, 2016, when the police responded for an incident that involved a dog bite caused by Evie, which required the dog bite victim to be transported to Emerson Hospital. Miss Halloran's dog, now over 2 years old, had never received any more than the first round of puppy shots. At the time, was not current with any rabies vaccinated as mandated by law, and was not licensed in the town of Acton. 2 days later, on May 23rd, 2016, police again responded to 14 Strawberry Hill Road for a report of concerned residents or citizens that Evie was again loose in the apartment complex area, unattended and dragging a leash. Although not witnessed by the police at the time of their response, this would clearly be a violation of the quarantine order issued 2 days earlier, that Evie at all times be under Miss Halloran's complete and total control. On June 7th, 2016, another incident was logged by police that Evie had attacked another resident's dog, and it was exhibiting aggressive behavior to other residents in the area. This incident occurred less than 16 days after the first bite incident and 6 days after Evie had been released from her initial quarantine for rabies. Feeling that these incidents would only escalate in the near future, and Evie's behavior and the owner's lackadaisical attitude towards controlling Evie's behavior, Acton Police Officer Dave Joe Wakeham sent me a notice requesting that further restrictions be placed upon Evie for the public safety. I can just add to that in my tenure as being animal control, never has a police officer asked me to do more than what we did. And it was a heartfelt email or letter. I think you guys have it. Just, he really feels from the, gut feeling there's going to be future escalated incidents if we don't curtail this. And Officer Joe Wakeham's here tonight.
Are there any questions by board members? Yes.
So my question is, do you have, or perhaps you want to wait to hear more, but do you have any initial recommendations about what kinds of additional measures that you think would be appropriate to try to prevent future incidents?
I think just before we discuss extra measures, we have to deem whether the dog's a nuisance or whether it's a dangerous dog, because they're handled two different ways. And I think town council is here if you have any questions on
Yep.
how we proceed.
Right, okay.
Other questions?
Firm? I just,
I'm sorry,
I just want-
Officer, were you there when the little girl was bitten? Did you see that incident?
No, I was not present for that one. I was at the June 7th incident where it attacked another dog.
I guess,
Can you tell us what you observed at that incident?
Yeah, I have my report right in front of me, if you don't mind just me going off of it. I was called by 2 residents of that complex, and they stated that they were walking their dog on a leash, or a neighbor's dog. They care for a couple dogs in the complex. They're walking their dog on a leash, and the dog in question charged at them. It had a leash on, but no owner in sight or present, and it attacked their dog. He had to use his foot to push the shepherd off of his dog, and then he saw a male subject come out of the back of the complex and yell for the dog to come inside. They told him that it had just attacked his dog, and the elder gentleman said, "Call the cops, I don't care," and he went inside the residence. So I went there. The dog appeared fine, but very skittish. They said it was, in a lot of fear. There were several children out there riding their bicycles in the front of the parking lot, and I asked them about it, and they say they avoid the back of the building because of the fear of the dog, but they don't call us on every occasion when something happens. It's only the extreme cases that they call the police, but they've said they know to avoid back there. Their parents have told them not to go back there because the dog runs loose back there sometimes. I tried to go to the apartment, and I knocked on the door, and nobody answered. I heard the dog inside, but no people inside. Nobody would answer the door for me. I know Officer Palmer has tried to contact the owner several times, and they appear to be avoiding him as well. So that's why I requested. It just seemed like they did not want to take control of their dog in any way, and that concerned me greatly, especially with several children that are commonly outside in that complex.
And Officer Palmer, you mentioned that the dog is neither licensed nor has rabies shots. Is that true?
That was true as of the first incident. It is now, it has at least a rabies shot, and it is licensed in town, but it took, I think, until almost June 14th to get that completed. At the time of the first bite, and I think the mother and child are here tonight, the dog was not current with any vaccinations whatsoever.
What are the consequences of that? Is that a fine, or
Well,
is that, you
state
can't
law-
find a dangerous
There is a
dog based on
$100
that?
fine.
Okay.
There is a state law that says every animal, cat or dog, shall have a rabies shot. There is a $100 fine for that.
Okay.
It's tough to enforce it if you don't
Yeah.
know where those animals are.
Right.
She got, on the first bite incident, she received a ticket from the town of Acton, which is a bylaw violation for not licensing her dog, and a second bylaw violation for not having her dog under her complete control.
Go ahead.
was there anything before that? So we, the bite of the child on May 21st, and then seen off leash or off without a person May 23rd, and then attacked a dog on June 7th. Was there anything before May 21st that was causing fear? I mean,
I really only have these 3 incidents, and in my job, I'm more reactive to what the police do. I'm not out patrolling the area, so most of these incidents, the firsthand knowledge is the police officer's report, and then I base my investigation off the report. I'm not aware of any, but if you talk to residents up there, they state this is a continuing, ongoing problem, just like Officer Joachim said, that basically they don't mention anything until it escalates to a dog bite. There's many, many kids up there, but anyone you talk to repeats that this is an ongoing scenario.
If I could just add, I searched our records, and there was nothing else in our file related to that dog, except for these 3 incidents.
so I'm just sort of curious, when the child was bitten and then it hadn't had rabies shots, does that mean the child had to undergo rabies shots, or were they able to then test the dog? Can you then test the dog? Because
What happens when an animal bite occurs by a domestic animal? There's a 10-day quarantine period, whether or not the dog is up to date with a rabies shot. The whole thought process is if a dog has to have full-blown rabies to transmit rabies to a human. There's a 10-day incubation period. For her dog to bite a child, it would most likely be dead within 48 hours from the rabies virus, which would then give us plenty of time to suggest that the person that got bitten get the post-rabies shots. So whether or not It's the same quarantine whether the dog is current with rabies or not. It's much more comforting to a parent to know that the dog has been properly taken care of, vaccinations are up to date if a bite occurs. It's very, very disheartening to tell someone the dog hasn't had any vaccinations and most of all has not had a rabies shot.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. You mentioned a restraint order. Was that the rabies restraint, or have you issued some order to restrain the dog at this point?
The dog there was a 10-day quarantine order issued to the dog for the May 21st bite, and that was for the period of time that's incubation for rabies. The dog was fine, as you can see. 6 days later there was another incident, and 16 days later another dog attack. So it went through its quarantine fine. It's free of rabies. It wasn't quarantined on the June 7th because even though there was an attack, there were no physical bites. So again, tickets were issued on that incident for not being licensed and for the dog not being under control. Okay.
So right now, the only control on the dog is the bylaws that require to have a dog.
The bylaws are the only control of that dog right now.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to give the owner of the dog an opportunity to respond first. I ask you to come to the microphone, and you have to hit the button so the red light comes on, because we're on TV, and it's not just the people in this room, it's the viewers at home that need to hear what you have to say. And I just ask you to start by stating your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Holleran, and I live at 14A Strawberry Hill Road in Acton, Mass. I've lived there since 2001. I left for a year and I came back. I have never had a problem in the complex. Actually, my dog used to play with Rachel every day when I came home from work, when I took her out. The problem became when they got a pit bull, and my dog does not like the pit bull. And I was under the impression that Rachel sleeps with the dog. I never had a problem before, and that's when the dog goes like this. She doesn't bite, she hits with her nose. That's what that dog does. It's a Groenendale. If you look it up, it's a German dog. The woman downstairs has the same type of dog. She doesn't let her dog around anyone. I, since that incident, do not let my dog around anyone. And if the dog was out there running, I have no idea. It wasn't me. I wouldn't do that to other people or do that to my dog. I'm sorry she didn't get licensed and her shots on time. My father was dying and I was running back and forth from here to Franklin to take care of him, and obviously poor Evie fell through the cracks. But she is licensed, she does have her shots, and she does not go out unless she's with me, and she does not go off the leash. That's since the quarantine. I think it was you, sir, that I saw coming down the hill with the dog. My leash was real long. There was an officer who was looking for me because there was a report that the dog was off the leash. She was not off the leash. She was with me.
Katie?
Can I ask how long you've owned the dog?
2.5 years.
So
I
since
got
she was
her
a
in
puppy?
2014, yes.
Okay, and you've done training with the dog at all?
Yes.
Okay. And have you, it sounds like, at least before some of these incidents, that the dog was with other people. Are there other people that look after the dog?
Just my boyfriend, and I told him I don't want him going out the house with her.
Okay.
I'll take care of her either first thing in the morning, or I take her out twice in the afternoon.
And you take her out, what kind of length of leash? It sounds like maybe you have a very long leash that she's out
No.
on? No.
No, not at all.
Okay. And so you're saying the incident on the 23rd, where it was reported that that Evie was not on her leash, that she was in fact on a leash at the time?
On the 23rd, that's with Joshua.
That was the time right after the dog bite, and the dog was supposed to be quarantined, and there was a police report, a call in that she was off the leash. And they
That
didn't
is not
observe it
true.
at the time, but somebody
That is
had
not
called
true.
that in. Okay.
I wouldn't let her off the leash because I was told by the officer to not let her off. I had to have her with me at all times.
Okay.
And to keep away from people and other dogs.
Okay, have you noticed, and did you notice before this incident, did you feel like your dog had issues with other dogs or with people?
Some dogs, I just decided to let her stay. She likes male dogs, she doesn't like female dogs. So I just keep her away from all of them.
And in terms of children as well, it sounds
Yeah.
like you used to let her play with them, or? Okay,
I used to let them come over and pet her, and I just don't anymore.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Janet?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Katie's questions about how long you owned the dog. You said you had the dog for 2.5 years, and I was wondering if why the delay in getting licensed? I know you said you had some other responsibility.
I was taking care of my father. He lived in Franklin, and I had to respect his wishes. He stayed at home. I had people coming and taking care of him. He had Alzheimer's, not Alzheimer's, dementia due to Parkinson's. So,
Okay. But it's 2.5 years, and I'm not familiar with the requirements.
no, it was just the last.
For licensing, so maybe Mr. Palmer, you could sort of fill me in on when this person acquires a dog, what are the licensing and vaccination requirements? What are the deadlines?
The drop deadline in Massachusetts is all dogs have to have a rabies shot by they're 6 months old. They get the first 3 sets of puppy shots between anywhere from 12 weeks old to that 6-month-old period. But at 6 months old in Massachusetts, a dog has to be licensed, and they have to receive their first full-time 1-year rabies shot, and then they need that rabies shot to be licensed. That all has to happen at 6 months of age.
Okay, so that you had, there was the first round of puppy shots, and then the full vaccination, I guess I know puppy shot, I'm not a dog owner, so I have no idea what all the details are, so.
All that was stated to the officer in the report that she had 1 round of puppy shots. So that could have been before she was 6 months old, that could have been after. They always start, it's just like giving little kids shots.
Right.
You start from the bottom up. So what was said in the report is that she was quoted as saying it had 1 round of puppy shots and never had a rabies shot. So I would assume she had puppy shots from the breeder. You never follow through with anything else, is the way I read that. She could dispute it and say anything else. Regardless, the dog was due a rabies shot by law at 6 months old.
And certainly had to be licensed as well.
And
Okay.
we start licensing at 6 months of
Okay,
age.
okay. That's all, those are all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to talk about the 23rd again. So it wasn't that the dog was off the leash. The 23rd report was the one where the patrol in Cruiser 1 was called to the area. It just says for a report of an ongoing animal issue. And the person that reported it said that the dog was on a leash, but in the area of kids riding bikes. And that when the fellow resident advised you didn't make any, this is what the report says, you didn't make any attempts to get the animal away from the area.
Was that with the initial?
No, this is 2 days after the bite one. So my question is about the area. It sounds to me like there are people that are afraid and that there's certain areas that you walk. Are there certain?
I don't walk my dog down that area anymore that they're talking about. It's the walkway that goes from the building to the parking lot. It's not actually a trail for people to be riding their bikes. I know the kids ride there, they ride all over the place, but
So, are there, is that what's considered the back? Somewhere in here it says.
it's near the back driveway. I go over there because I don't want to bother anyone, and I don't want to be bothered, so that's a small area that I can take my dog to that no one goes to.
So that's what it seems like the problem is, people wanting to be in the same place, some feeling afraid of the dog, and you wanting to walk your dog.
That's the walkway. I don't go down there anymore at all. I don't go over there at all.
So there's a way for you to get out of the
Yes.
house and get somewhere where the dog can walk, where it's not near any people?
Yes.
Okay. I totally understand. I just have to tell you that I have had a dog that has similar behavior, but not inviting people. And so it's sort of, that's where it gets confusing to me. about, I mean, that's where the big difference is, that going after a dog, both constitute a dangerous dog according to our definition that we have to
Yes, I understand
determine.
that.
And it sounds like your dog has
I'm
both.
trying to resolve the whole issue by staying away from everyone in the complex.
And what about this so when was it that I guess, the man made the comments? Your
That was my
boyfriend?
boyfriend.
Yeah, was it when he bit the dog? I'm trying to remember which night it was.
Yeah, it was June 7th, it was the last
It was June
incident.
7th, yeah. So he had let the dog out.
No, he was out there with the dog. He was with Emily and her 2 dogs, and they were laying there. And Joshua came over and kicked my dog in the head. And then he ran by and he goes, "You better pick up your leash or I'm going to call the cops." And Joe got up. He has 2 compressed discs in his back, and he has a hard time maneuvering, so he just called Evie and brought her into the house.
So he had let the dog away from him.
The dog wasn't near him. They walked by.
No, but
where
he had
they were.
let Evie away from him. How was Evie away from him?
Evie was with this, she was off the leash and she was laying down with the other 2 dogs that Emily owns.
So she was off the leash.
They were too. So
So
they were, all 3 of them were laying there. She even
Okay.
took a picture of it.
that's my concern, is if you had already agreed that she would never be off the leash, and now she was off the leash.
I didn't know, and I yelled at him about it because then I get in trouble. He's not mentioned anywhere on there. He's not even in this.
So I'm just wondering how we can be comfortable that he won't be off the leash again when there are kids and dogs playing there.
He's been told he cannot take the dog out,
Okay.
or there'll be consequences, because I'm not going to lose my dog because he wants to be selfish.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
That's my concern, is because...
Yes, mine too.
I really feel for
Mine
people
too.
feeling afraid, and especially when a child has been bitten, it's really scary to have a big dog.
Well, she used to play with her. And I'm really sorry. I did not do this on purpose.
No, everyone knows that you didn't do this on purpose and wouldn't want this to happen. So it's not an enviable
If I could take it back, I
position to
would.
be in. Yes, I can imagine.
I mean, I was right there. I was right there holding my dog. And the other girl, she went right over and laid up right up against her and let her pet her. And then when it came to Rachel, I think she smelled her dog on her. And I couldn't understand it. You know, I feel bad.
Can I add one thing about the May 23rd incident? Miss Robertson is here. She could clear up. She's from what I understand from the report, she were the one that initiated the police report that night. She's here with her daughter. She's also, the daughter is the victim of the first dog bite. So maybe she could come up and say whether or not the dog was on or off a leash when she called on the 23rd of May. That's firsthand knowledge.
Yeah, we certainly do want to hear from, I believe it's Ms. Robertson, I guess, but I have just a couple of questions, Ms. Holloran.
Yes.
You said you had the dog for 2.5 years. Is that the age of the dog also?
Yes.
So it has a lot of energy. It's still kind of a puppy. Is it
Yeah.
a shepherd type of dog? Is that
Yes,
my
she's about this
understanding?
high.
Okay,
She looks like a black collie.
okay. And
I haven't yet found a place where I can take her, where it's like fenced in so she can run around.
did you say that you had, what about the rabies shots?
Oh, she has her rabies shots. I got that right away. The closest I could get was the 11th, and it was at 4 o'clock. I had to leave work early in order to get that taken care of.
Recently?
Yes.
So what about
I have another appointment for,
leading up to it? What about the first 2 years you had the dog?
I was, all the paperwork and everything with my dad, because I was power of attorney and healthcare proxy for my dad, settling his estate.
Weren't you concerned about the dog and not having a rabies shot?
Yes, I was.
You
But I
just-
was not. I was misinformed. I was told that Sager and right next door charges an arm and a leg to go there, and they don't. because not only did I get her a rabies shot, I also got her a distemper shot.
Recently?
Yes.
When Mr. Palmer
Yes, as soon as I could.
gave you a citation? Okay. Did you have anything else you want to say at this point?
No, I'm just very sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other members of the public want to come forward and speak to this issue? Again, let me just ask you to please state your name and address and make sure the red light's on the microphone there.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Robertson, and this is my daughter Rachel. She was bitten by Evie. So this is not the first incident. She had been nipped at towards the face by her once before, and there have been other neighbors that have witnessed this, other neighbors that have said that she's done this to them as well. I have pictures of the bite from the hospital, and she is very afraid of this dog. Everybody in our complex is very afraid of this dog. My dog I don't let my dog go near any of the dogs, so I don't know, and her dog is gone after my dog off leash. And my dog is scared of her. I mean, I have a pit bull, and she's runs behind me when her dog ran after her. But I mean, she has a scar now from this bite.
Do you have the picture with you?
I do.
Well, we could take a look at that.
She says that she just hit her with her nose, but that's clearly not just a nose bite or a hit.
Questions from board members? Franny?
I don't have a question, but I do acknowledge, I mean, it looks like several teeth marks. It looks like I saw about 6 teeth marks there. It looks very scary.
Yes.
And I know how scary it is to be bit by a dog. I don't know if I have any questions.
Janet?
Well, I know that Evie is referred to as a shepherd dog, and I think that Mrs. Halloran referred to how tall she is. I gather your pit bull is shorter.
It's a little bit, she's actually a little bit smaller than her dog.
And you said
is
your dog
45
is
pounds.
is afraid of.
When her dog ran after my dog ran behind me.
But certainly Evie, relative to Rachel, is pretty tall.
Yeah, up to about her
Yeah.
hip.
Yeah, so good size, and yeah, if she's aggressive, that would be very frightening, so, okay, that's all right now, thanks.
I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the incident. I don't know if either you or Rachel, if you could say, were you playing with the dog and then the dog bit you, or had you gone up to pet? How did exactly did the bite happen? Sorry, you can move it to, yeah, sorry. We're gonna get like a stool.
I just went up to pet the dog.
Okay, and you had pet that dog before?
Yeah,
Okay, and that time you went up to pet it like you normally did,
yeah,
and it bit you?
yeah.
Okay, all right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you telling us. I'm really sorry that happened.
Franny?
A question for TAC or for a vet or and a behavior person. Do dogs sometimes get confused? I mean, it's like, is that explanation of it smelled? Not that I think that that's a reason that a dog, I mean, it's no excuse for a dog, but I was just wondering if that's likely to have happened, the smell of a dog on a person causing a dog to bite the person.
I don't think anything could tell what led to that event. Her dog is more, everyone thinks of a tricolored German Shepherd like Acton police dogs or police dogs. This is more like a Belgian Shepherd. It's like a black-looking collie. It's a herding dog. So these dogs tend to nip, they tend to bite, they tend to poke with their nose to push animals around. Why it did that to her, you don't know, but in my opinion, dogs shouldn't get a second chance with a bite, especially, they should have the intellect to tell the difference. I don't believe the dog smelt something on her, but you can't fault her. She's a young daughter. She could have moved some way that set the dog off. It shouldn't have happened. I don't think anyone could tell you why that happened.
You said you don't think dogs should get a second chance when they bit a person, as you're saying.
I don't think so. I think we do give a lot of second chances, but in my tenure, again, I usually don't have 3 incidents in 16 days. I mean, that doesn't, in my book, that doesn't deserve another chance. We need to do something to curtail this. That is a pretty densely populated neighborhood, that whole apartment complex with a lot of kids. And kids she can't grow up in fear of going out in her own yard.
Do you have anything else you wish to say, Ms. Robertson?
No.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate it. There being no further questions from board members, or? Oh, yes. Any other members of the audience want to come forward and speak to this issue? Seeing none, more questions from board members?
It's not a question, I mean, it's sort of a comment. I've said this at every dog hearing we've had, that if my wish when there's these dog hearings and there's a dog that's bit a person is that the person will choose to euthanize their dog. I mean, it's like I don't want to make a decision, but that's always my, it's always, well, I'm just saying that was what I always picture. If my dog actually bit a person and badly like that, it would be hard to feel like I could control it. Now, I have, as I said, had a dog that's been challenged, and I've had to just keep it away from other dogs for the rest of its life, just because I know it, for whatever reason, sometimes gets aggressive toward dogs. I would love to determine whether we consider it a dangerous dog and then turn to TAC and hear how you think we should deal with it, because when you say not to get a second chance, I don't know if you mean just better control or you mean euthanasia. I'd like to be clear about that.
Let me just clear, we're not a town that euthanizes dogs per se, so in saying it doesn't get a second chance, meaning more like the dog needs to be muzzled or other corrective action has to happen. Basically,
Actually, at this point, I think we're getting into kind of argument, so I'm going to close the hearing. If there's no further testimony or evidence that's coming in, we'll close the hearing at this point, and we need to make a determination, and now we can address all those issues.
Peter, can we ask Nina to clarify the difference between a nuisance dog and a dangerous dog first?
Okay, I'm going to ask Town Council for clarification on the difference between a nuisance dog and a dangerous dog under the statute.
It's right after page 9, if you're looking for it.
So as far as the definitions of nuisance dog and dangerous dog under Chapter 140, Section 136A, a dangerous dog is a dog that either, one, without justification attacks a person or domestic animal causing physical injury or death, or two, behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury or death to a person or a domestic or owned animal. A nuisance dog is a dog that, one, by excessive barking or other disturbance is a source of annoyance to a sick person residing in the vicinity, or two, by excessive barking causing damage or other interference, a reasonable person would find such behavior disruptive to one's quiet and peaceful enjoyment. Or 3, has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal or person, but such threat or attack was not a grossly disproportionate reaction under the circumstances. So as we've done in hearings in the past, you all should deliberate first on whether you deem the dog to be a dangerous dog or a nuisance dog or neither. And then you can go on to your determinations about in either case, whether it's a nuisance dog or a dangerous dog, what you believe the appropriate remedy should be.
Okay, so the first question is this a dangerous dog or a nuisance dog? Or none, neither?
I mean, personally, it's bitten a person, and there have been reports that it's aggressive towards other animals, and that last incident perhaps, attacked that other dog. To me, I think it's fairly clear that it's a dangerous dog under the definition.
Any further discussion?
No, I agree.
All right, then I think we should probably vote to make that determination if that's the way people feel. So I'll entertain a motion to find that the dog involved in these incidents is a dangerous dog.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. So that being the case, we've made a determination under the statute that this was a dangerous dog. Mr. Palmer, do you have recommendations about how we should deal with the situation?
My recommendation would be number 3 under the Chapter 140, Section 157, that the dog should be muzzled at all times when outside of her apartment. Basically, number 3 is that when it's removed from her premises, meaning the interior of her apartment, the owner or the premises or person keeping the dog or in charge of the dog shall securely and humanely muzzle and restrain the dog with a chain or tether device having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds, not to exceed 3 feet. I believe this recommendation, even though it's read that way, I do not believe it is humane to put a dog in a chain at this point, so it should be a leash or a tether. But number 3 is what I would recommend. Providing she could adhere to that. Obviously, if we knew that dog was out without a muzzle, then we should, we would, I don't know if you reopen the hearing or we come back in on another hearing and we would take, much stricter actions.
Yes, Katie?
Yeah, so that was my question, Tack. What happens if, sort of what's the follow-up to make sure that is happening? And what happens if you have reports of, or you find that the dog isn't being muzzled when outside the apartment?
I think we would have to consult town council on what would be the next step, but it would certainly be much more severe than that, leading up to and not excluding euthanizing the dog. There are other steps after just muzzling, and she breaks that. I mean, we would have to consult town council, but I think a lot of this dog's disposition has to do with human error as well as dog error. I believe that the muzzling and the owner strictly adhering to the dog being leash kept and on a muzzle should stop all these problems.
And then can I ask, has the dog been spayed?
I don't know that.
She's going to be spayed, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that question.
If the dog was going to be spayed, and
Okay.
Ms. Halloran said
Yeah.
it would be, because that's one of the number 6 on the things we can order if it's deemed a dangerous dog, is that it be altered so the dog shall not be reproductively intact.
I just wondered
Franny?
about the insurance. I just wondered about the insurance suggestion. Do you recommend going along with it?
I don't know anything about the insurance. That would be something that town council, I don't know how easy that is to get, if it's possible to get. I know what's in here is number 4. I can't imagine that there's insurance companies lining up to insure dogs that have bitten people. So I know it's part of this, but I don't know if any of you have dealt with insurance companies. I think that's basically, if you're requesting that, you're asking her to place the dog. Now that it has a dangerous dog title, it's very hard to place this dog. So we could ask that, someone could look into it. I don't know how you could get that. I do think, though, with the muzzle and us asking for what is said in number 3, I think we would know very quickly if she was adhering to what we said. The officer can tell you it's a pretty tight neighborhood up there, and people will call very quickly if they know that this is what we're doing and that dog's out. It won't take long to let us know. It isn't like it's a rural house where you can't see this happening, so.
Say, I realized I spoke really harshly. It sounded very harsh when I said I just wish it would be, the owner would use it. I guess it was my way of saying, it's so important to me that nothing happened to a person from it, and I think I was exaggerating, and I'm glad to hear you make a more reasonable suggestion that you think would be a way to restrain the dog that people can feel safe. So I just wanted to sort of backtrack on my harsh way of saying that.
In my experience, there's 2 types of dogs and owners in the town that bite people. Every dog can make a mistake and bite someone. And then I suggest remedies and whatnot. Those are the people that take my advice, those are the people you never hear from again. Usually when this reoccurs, it's an owner issue. The owner doesn't want to deal with the situation. So that's why we're in a hearing like this. I think to date, we've probably got 35 to 40 bites in town, and this is the only one that's been a recurring incident, so.
Janet?
I have a question. I like your recommendation, or I agree with it, but I'm wondering, not being a dog that's been muzzled, I don't know how dogs react to muzzling. I don't know if, in addition, we should urge the owner to take the dog to somebody to evaluate why the dog is behaving this way, because, I know that as long as the dog is reacting this way, the dog is always going to have to be muzzled when it's outside. And, I always think about the dog ends up, for the shortcomings of human beings, at some point ends up being the one who has to be punished for being a dog. And so I don't know if dogs can be trained to stop being reactive, or do you think in this case the dog is always going to require a muzzle?
This type of dog this dog is bred for almost this herding behavior or this type of reaction to mostly animals, but it can be translated into what it does to people. It can't be trained out. Yeah. Muzzles have come a long way. The dog will suffer no ill effects from being muzzled. I think she has a neighbor that has the same type of dog, and she readily muzzles her dogs quite often. It's not a cruel, it's not a inhumane thing, and we're only talking, she stated that she brought the dog out for a walk a couple times a day, so you got to figure 22 hours a day the dog's not going to have a muzzle on it in the house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure if we issue this order, it's, Ms. Holleran is the owner of the dog. It's licensed in her name. She's talked about her boyfriend taking the dog out when she's not around. This order is for anybody who takes a dog out of the house. Ms. Holleran, if we issue this order, you will be responsible for your boyfriend's behavior also when he removes a dog from the house. Is that accurate?
I believe that's accurate. We can consult town council, but this is something, even if she placed the dog, this order goes with the dog for the life of this dog.
Katie?
I'll just make my comments that I think this is sort of the way I was leaning, and I agree. I think muzzling the dog will hopefully resolve it. It's just a matter of if it will happen. And frankly, I was really concerned when you said that you didn't get the dog shots or take it to the vet in large part because of the cost. And I understand concerns about cost, but when you take on pet ownership, you have to understand and know that that is your responsibility. And taking care of that dog and getting it the shots it needs is, financially hard, but you signed up for that when you got that dog. And it is your responsibility both to deal with that and to make sure that this dog is under control at all times. And so it needs to be taken out. You know that it has these behaviors and it's scared people in the area. And whether you agree with how that happened or not, or these specific incidences, that is what is going on. And it's your responsibility to make sure that this dog is taken care of and protected. This wasn't, this was, like Tack said, frankly, user and owner error. I don't blame the dog in this case. And I'm happy that the muzzling is not something that's, inhumane in any way now. And because what bothers me most about a lot of these incidences is that we end up doing things that, or putting burdens on the dog that are harmful to the dog when it's not fair to it. So I'm disappointed with how this was sort of, how you've been handling your dog so far, and I'm really hope that this is a wake-up call that you need to be a better dog owner. And I really recommend that we do, make recommendation number 3 and consider also adding in number 7 that it be spayed. That sounds like her plan, but it doesn't hurt to make that a specific requirement as well.
Yeah, 7 is, let's see. No.
Oh, 6, I'm sorry, 6.
6,
I
okay.
got that number right, yeah. It's been up for a long time.
Okay.
I would like to ask that the condo development also make sure that, we can't directly talk to the condo development, that they make sure a conversation happens about where kids can play without, knowing that they're not going to come across a dog, even if it sounds like even if the dog's on a leash, if it's coming across people who are playing, it sounds like people are uncomfortable with that. So I hope that you work it out with your neighbors and talk about it and make sure everybody's clear about where, because you reasonably have to get your dog in and out. And so, right, so, but it would be nice if they didn't have to worry about watching for you. And sure, the dog will be muzzled now, but it would be good if everybody would make sure they all understand where you're going to walk when you go out, so.
We close the hearing, Peter. We close the hearing.
Yeah, the hearing is closed. We shouldn't really be having a colloquy anymore at this point, so. Anybody?
I second.
I didn't make a motion,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I can.
Is it? Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
what I'm hearing is, we need a motion that the dog under Chapter 140, Section 157C3, that whenever the dog is removed from the premises, it shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a tethering device having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet in length. And under C6, that the owner or keeper of the dog cause the dog to be altered so that the dog shall not be reproductively intact unless a veterinarian is of the opinion the dog is unfit for alterations because of a medical condition.
So moved.
Sure?
What is the purpose of doing 6?
Spaying
Because, just to
Sometimes it
Prevent
affects, yeah. And
reproduction and having puppies and that sort of thing.
Right, and it can
It's
also
a very
make
different
them less
purpose from
aggressive.
having something, a male fix, but, but, okay. I'm fine with that.
We need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
The only thing I'd like to add with your motion is to make sure that premises includes inside the apartment, because it is a condo association, so I don't know if people could consider the premises as the land around the condominium too, or apartment. So I would just have wording such that the premises, meaning anytime it's outside the interior of the apartment or apartment building.
Yeah, so that applies to the hallways. If you remove from the premises, that's the apartment. So that applies to the hallways or the other common areas of the building, so. All right, the next item on the agenda is a discussion of a letter of non-opposition for Mass Wellspring. Oh, I did? 2, business, oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is an item involving business inventory database presentation by Larry Kina of the Economic Development Committee. Please come forward. Whichever, it's your choice.
Good evening. My name is Doug Tyndall. I'm the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. I'm here to introduce Larry Kina, who is a member of the committee of some substantial standing. Larry has been with the committee for, what, 3-4 years? Almost 4, right? 4. Yeah, as some of you may know, the Economic Development Committee committed to a rethinking and what we called a rebooting of what the purpose of the committee was and how it was organized. That was over a year ago now. We're at the point where 5 subcommittees have been created for the purpose of carrying on a variety of specific functions supportive of economic development. The subcommittee that Larry took over was the one relating to the database of information about businesses in Acton. There are existing databases, but they're not on point. We found them very difficult to work with. And Larry stepped up and has taken the leadership and put in an extraordinary amount of time in working to bring the Economic Development Committee's database, the town's database, up to full speed. And with that, I'll turn it over to Larry.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. In the spirit of full disclosure, you guys are not the first people to hear this pitch. Selby and I presented it to Steve and to Matt almost a couple of weeks ago. But this is a much more formal presentation, obviously. And Doug sort of touched on what it is we're doing. One of the things I remember when I first joined the EDC was that there were various projects or attempts at projects underway, and one of them was an attempt to build a business inventory database, starting with some existing sources. And that particular project seemed to go nowhere, and I don't know, probably once or twice in the following years we tried to do it again. And this is yet another effort, and I'll talk in a couple of different places about why we think we are going to be successful this time, where we have met with little or no success in the past. So what we're doing is building and populating a database that contains a small amount of useful information about every business in town. In, I believe, the agenda item and in a lot of the times we talk about it, we refer to it as a business inventory database. That's one of the ways of thinking about it. And I had to be a little bit careful. I have a very technical background, and I tend to at times get down into the weeds, and I throw the word database around a lot and people start getting all crazy. So think of it rather as an inventory of the businesses in the town. Why are we doing this? Well, at a high level, Selby and those of us in the committee want to get a better sense of the current state of the business world, the economic world in the town, so that we can figure out this is where we are, and if we want to get to somewhere else, these are the steps we need to get there. And one of the ways I characterize what's behind this is we want to be able to answer a bunch of how many and how much kinds of questions. We actually had a short discussion about this at a recent meeting, and somebody asked, so how many businesses do we have in Acton? And we didn't really know the answer. And that's sort of pretty bad. Let me make an aside here. One of the bits of preliminary work that we went through was to find out, well, what are the other towns in the area doing? And I actually sent a questionnaire out figuring that Westford and Littleton and Maynard and Sudbury or whatever all had the kind of system we want to put in place. And what I wanted to know is, how did they do it? What were the problems they had, and so on and so forth. And I learned something very different, that maybe one town has something like what we're looking for. Nobody else does. So it changed the way I've been thinking about it and the way I'm trying to get the rest of the committee to think about it. A second use that people have suggested very quickly is that members of town staff can use this as a communications path to allow people inside the town to communicate with the various businesses in town, letting them know about public hearings, perhaps proposed zoning changes, things that might affect them early on in the game, as opposed to we're writing the final version of a proposed zoning kind of thing, and we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, and all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, this is really going to have a big effect on my business. So who are the users of this system going to be? Well, we've got Selby and the EDC right at the top, the town staff that we just mentioned, but we see this as it gets built and as other people in town recognize the value that it has. Other people are going to see that, hey, I can use this for this particular thing. And people are going to come up with uses for this that certainly I, and perhaps other members of the committee, never even thought of. So I started out, I didn't put you guys on this particular slide, but I'm sure once we get going, you're all very smart, creative people. You're going to come up with things you'd like to do as well. And then, as we've talked about it with other audiences, we start hearing, well, maybe the businesses would like to use this communication path to communicate among themselves. And then things start going a little bit crazy, and what I try to do is to sort of temper this all and say, let's get going, let's get started, and we can start thinking of step 2s and step 3 uses of it after we have accomplished this step 1s. One of the things that I tried to do a lot in work was when people are talking about, we're going to build System X, wanted to craft what System X was, and I tried to draw the boundaries around things. This is in X, this is in X. Oh, by the way, this is not, and this is not. And one of the reasons for doing that is you don't want to set false expectations. But in general, it's a good idea. The first thing we're not doing is we're not building a general business locator. There are systems out there that are way better than anything we could ever do if we had $1 million in 10 years to play with. There are systems that are designed for that. That's not what we're trying to accomplish. But we started putting other non-goals into the system as well. One of the things we want this system to be is something that businesses are really excited about participating in. So we wanted to avoid any kind of artificial barriers and say, you know, this is a pretty good idea, but I ain't going to tell you that. I'm not interested in answering that question. So the most obvious thing there is we're not going to be asking any kind of financial information. It's just, and the other thing that we want to avoid is we're not assembling a list of businesses that we can then go out and sell to whoever comes knocking on the door. This is an area where we're taking a different approach than we've done in the past. In the past, people have assembled existing databases either from town data sources, like the clerk's office, or things that exist out there in the public domain, Yelp, or one of these kinds of things. And you end up with thousands of entries in a system. And there are a lot of duplicates, a lot of out-of-date information, a lot of newer businesses that are missing. We're going to try a different approach, and we're going to start with just building a database that has the retail businesses in it. And we're not taking a very doctrinaire, well, this is retail, this is not. It's sort of, well, we think it is, we're going to throw it in. But we're going to start with this modest size set of businesses that a lot of people recognize. And if we are successful here, we've already built a useful subset that will allow us and other people in the town to ask and answer some valuable questions. There's a negative way of answering this as well. If we can't build a database just with the retail businesses, then we're obviously not going to be able to do the whole lot. But I'm thinking about it more from the positive side. Having accomplished that, and then one other thing about it, and this comes from my way of building systems. You start small. You build a system and you sort out a lot of the ugly problems and whatever with something small, get them out of the way, so that as you grow it and add more and more types of businesses and businesses to the system, you've already solved a bunch of the little problems. And then the problems that come with the scale of adding more and more businesses, they're very special. You've got all of the silly stuff out of the way early on. The next, this is a little bit arbitrary, and these are my lists, and if people want to do something different, well, I'll hand them the mantle and they can lead the project. Next comes healthcare and professional. So we're including here, obviously, anything that is in the healthcare business, except for what I'll call wellness, yoga studios and gyms and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be up in step 1 in retail. But then we've got lawyers and accountants and financial planners and real estate and so on and so forth. Next step is the remaining multi-person businesses. This would be the things located on School Street and Craig Road. When you go up to North Acton, you go on Quarry Road and Ledge Rock Road, and we would include Harts and AES and the big companies like that. And then finally, we're going to get to the single person's businesses. This is somebody running a fill in the blank out of the den or the basement or the spare bedroom or whatever. The approach we're going to take for the first 3 is going to be very different. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's going to be very different from the last one. We're going to do a sort of walking around in canvas. One other aspect of this is we might never get to step 4. One of the things that I've been talking to other people as we talk about, well, what are the kinds of information we want to ask? And if you would ask an open-ended question like that, you could end up with 50 bits of information. So my challenge to the members of the committee, who are the first people I put this out to, is if you come up with an interesting piece of information, you need to be able to say, and oh, by the way, if we find out this information about all the businesses, this is how we could use it. And that's really pared the list down a lot. And that's where the whole single-person business comes in as well. Because in terms of the scale, we're probably I would be surprised if we got somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 in the first 3 bullets. The last bullet will add probably another 6,000. And the question is, does this additional volume in the system give us additional commensurate value? Okay, I don't know if you can read this. There's, in your handout, you also have a letter that we're distributing to the business, and in the back of that is a much better reproduction of this. But very briefly, the information at the top of the page is the basic information about the business, name of the business, street address, local contact information. And then the interesting bits are in the second category. What kind of business are you? How many employees do you have? When did you start in the town of Acton? Do you own or rent? And how many square feet do you have? In the how many employees do you have? This was a question that I simply had as a question in my original list, and a couple of the people that have been advising us have said, you know, you probably don't want to ask that question looking for, well, I've got 28 or 33 or 42 or whatever. Come up with a set of bins and let people put some bin size in there. So maybe we're not going to be able to answer the question, who's got the largest number of employees in the town of Acton? Well, we've got 4 that are in the 50 or greater, but that's okay. Okay, how are we going to do this? Rather than culling databases that are out there, Yellow Pages or Yelp or this or that or the other thing, we, and that means at least I, will start walking and driving around town, visiting the various businesses, carrying a much more official version of this letter and asking people to fill this out. And hopefully we can get a few more people on this. But this is going to be helpful in a bunch of ways. One of the first things it'll be, if we are way off base in this, we're going to find out pretty quickly. We're asking dumb questions, or people are not receptive to giving us the information, or whatever. We're going to be making geographic passes through the town, and my really quick geography lesson is that we're going to cover 90+% of the retail businesses in Acton by 3 streets: Great Road, Mass Ave, and Main Street. People say, well, you forgot about this, you forgot about that. Greater than 90%. The second group, the healthcare and professional, is going to be the same geography again, plus office parks, some of which are located on those main roads. The third bit is going to get more interesting, because in addition to the obvious places for businesses, there are things probably down some of these, like there's one I pass going up Route 27 into Westford. There's a sign tacked on the tree. It's got Kennedy something on there, landscaping or whatever. This is presumably the factory part of the stuff that's located right in the center of town. And I know from playing golf at Butterbrook that there are quarries and rock choppers and all kinds of other stuff back there as well. So this last bit, in terms of the going around town, is going to be a lot more interesting than the first two, simply in terms of how we find these things. One of the critical aspects of building a system like this is you got to keep it up to date. We could, again, wave a magic wand, and I'll pick a date, October 1st, we've got the perfect database. We've got every single business that exists in the town of Acton. Except on October 15th or November 1st or whatever, new businesses come into town. Sadly, some businesses leave town for either they're moving somewhere else or they just aren't cutting it. And equally important, especially when we're building a system that's going to be used as a communication channel, we need to make sure that the little details are up to date as well. What's the name of the owner? What's the most recent email address, phone number, and so on and so forth. So we need to make sure that we can keep track of and record in the system these changes. And this is one of the areas where we're going to be asking for a small amount of help from town. So what are we asking for? Well, initially, we want support from Selby, Steve, Mark, and you guys. And this is you guys are doing a great job. You know, is there any way we can help you, and so on and so forth. We will need some support from the IT department. Not a lot, but this will be ongoing. And I need to reconnect with Matt Frost. Selby and I met with him probably a couple months ago now with an initial description of the kind of system we wanted to build. And he had this side project that he was working on at the time called rebuilding the entire website for the town. So there was sort of, after the initial response, not a lot from him. Finally, we heard from him last week and said, okay, I'm out from under that thing, and now we can get serious and start talking about your system again. And it's going to be not a lot, but there'll be some kind of stuff. Sidelight here, an interesting educational experience for me, because I typically start with, okay, I'm going to come up with the simplest system I can think of. So we're going to build a database, and it's going to be on a system somewhere, and people can access it. And one of the first things I learned is that the IT people don't want systems like that in this building, which not just this building physically, but anything on the town of Acton premises, because there are all kinds of security requirements and order requirements and various kinds of things. So we've seen this in things like the tax system, where it's outsourced to, I think it's called City Hall Systems. The website itself is outsourced to somebody else. So when people say, well, do you have the latest version of Windows or the database software or the web server software or whatever, instead of scratching your head or saying, yeah, we do, because we've got 3 full-time employees worrying about this stuff, you say, we don't have to worry about that anymore. It's out there somewhere. So we obviously want to do the same thing with this system here. It's going to be out there in the cloud so that somebody else has to worry about the housekeeping details. And then we will simply worry about proper access control, getting the data into the system, and allowing various people to make use of it. The other piece of support we're looking for is ongoing data maintenance, that we will somehow figure out what the new businesses are on a weekly or a monthly basis, what businesses have gone away, but we're going to need some human being to actually, on a, I'll say, weekly basis, actually make the changes. So that Fred's Pizza, that's been in Acton for 20 years and disappeared, needs to be removed from the system. Or we got Johnny Rockets is in town now, so we need to add that to the system. Or Dunkin' Donuts changed its address from whatever Main Street to, I don't know, 50 numbers higher or whatever. And my estimate, totally pulling a number out of the air, was we're looking about 2 person hours a week. So, and when we brought that up to Steve, he said, yeah, we could deal with that. So, okay, so thank you all very much. And do you have? I didn't even get to say any questions.
Actually, before we get to questions from the board, let me ask Steve, you've had conversations with these gentlemen, so what's your perspective on this?
No, I think it's a great project. It's something that actually goes back to when I first started 8 years ago. I'm pretty sure, had coffee with Dick Calandrell and a couple other folks, and they were talking about this 8 years ago, so it's been a long time coming, and I think it's real important, and as Larry mentioned, there's a lot of tools that we all can use from it, so I think it's a great project.
Okay, thank you. Janet, you had your hand up before they finished speaking, so
Well,
go ahead.
you tend to look that way, and then, then Katie asks all the questions, and I sit here like a dumb lump anyhow. But no, I happen to think it's a great project, and I do remember when I first joined the board, and even before, hearing about some big project that EDC was working on, and every once in a while I'd say, so what happened? Hey, Dick, how's the database going? And, well, we're working on it anyhow. So I think that it will be very useful. It's, your committee should know the audience that you're serving, because people will want to know things like, well, how many businesses do we have in town, and what's going on with them, and all that sort of thing. But one of the questions I had is, you said that this is principally going to be for the use of your committee and other town committees and town staff. Is it going to be accessible, or are you going to have passwords to protect it, to keep general public from getting access? The information is I assume going to be sort of information that is generally available publicly if people were willing to look for it, but obviously it's going to be consolidated in one place, which has its own value because somebody's gone to the bother of putting it together. So I didn't know if you were, because some people in the town may be interested in just saying what we have. I don't know if you're going to then have somebody put together a summary, with big numbers saying we have so many of these businesses in that business, and not let people have access to the database itself other than town-related people.
So do you remember that slide I put up?
Council is sitting behind you, shaking her head about general public access.
Do you remember the slide I put up there with, I'm not going to look at what I'm not going to look at. Remember the slide I put up there with users of the system? If I were to expand this presentation by one slide, it would probably be future uses. Once we've got this thing available and people, town staff and EDC and others have used this to say, this is a pretty good system, it's got useful information, we will figure out how we can open up to a wider community. Now, is she shaking her head yes or no?
No, she's sort of shaking her head. One of the things that I had a question about is this chart. LEQ, is this code for
I'm-
less than or equal to? Because
than or-
I don't know if this is a commonly
Yes.
understood acronym that I'm the only one who has to sort of.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to change that?
This is what happens when you put a physicist on your
G-
economic
G-
development committee.
I don't remember, GTR is greater than, GEQ is greater or equal to, I don't know what less than is, LEQ is less than or equal to.
Yeah, listen, but I'm wondering if you're going to change that terminology when you're going to have all the people who are using these filling it in, and you're not going to make the people, the businesses have to fill this in, so that they don't have to know that.
The fact that you're asking this question means that we need to reword that.
You mean to say that this didn't jump out?
I'm sorry?
What? These little abbreviations, LEQ and GTR, didn't jump out at you as something that maybe the average person wouldn't really be able to figure out?
When I was in graduate school, there was this requirement that you had to learn a foreign language, and fortunately they got rid of it. The most popular language was Russian. Somebody said, well, gee, why don't we ask that people have Fortran as the language, which for those of you, Fortran is an ancient programming language, which sort of tells you how old I am. Somebody else said, well, people should be able to use Fortran as if they are speaking in English. And that's sort of the sin or the trap I fell into here. So the fact that you're asking the question says that that particular part of the page needs work so that it's accessible to human beings.
That's very good. And the only final comment I have is that when you're going around, if you have people going around trying to talk to people, you're going to have that piece of paper. I would suggest, if it's possible, to have some sort of nice name tag that makes you
We had talked about
official,
that, getting something like that for the volunteers.
so that
It's going to be something like that, but it's not going to have any of the secret codes or chips or whatever.
Yeah, you won't be able to go anywhere
Getting
inside
limited
of,
security with this, absolutely.
So, along those lines, we will also send a letter to the police department, letting them know what we're up to, so that almost certainly, somebody's going to be calling up and saying, these people started wandering into my shop and asking me all these questions and whatever. So we talked about the ID, we talked about the letter. We'll have a letter in the Beacon and some sort of article in Action Unlimited, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And so we want to get as much publicity as we can so that people not only are aware of this, but are actually sort of excited about it.
and get it on our website somewhere. People actually do read it, and now that it's been overhauled and fancified and modernized and all that, although I'm so used to having found things on the old website that I'm having trouble getting adjusted. Yeah, but yeah, otherwise, I get the Beacon. I'm one of 5 people who gets it probably, but I read the police blotter religiously because it's often entertaining, and I don't want to be reading, suspicious person going around asking questions. No problem, not an issue, EDC member, anyhow. But thank you very much. I hope this project moves along. I think that it helps have Selby on board. He's full of energy. I think he's cloned himself already. But I think that I've certainly heard about what other towns' EDC operations are doing. They're very familiar with what they have in town. They're also aware of what the gaps are in town, and they sort of set themselves up to be inviting to whatever business might be able to fill that gap from elsewhere. So they're primed to sort of invite businesses that they might need to come and check them out. So, and I know that's where maybe ultimately we want to get, but this is a really great start. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Franny?
But you don't want to,
Well, we could go to members of the
I do have
audience
comments and
if you...
questions, but I'm happy to wait. Oh,
Okay. Usually we do the selectmen first, but Chief,
Okay.
go ahead.
That is a good idea to check in at the beginning of your shift, just to let us know what car you're driving. But as far as the database goes, at 3 o'clock in the morning, we find out quickly when an outdated emergency contact list for a business is in effect. So we start calling people who used to work there. So this would be great for us to be able to help us keep our emergency contact list updated for the police and the fire departments. Thank you.
Great.
Town council has a
didn't wanna
comment
get
as
in their
well,
way.
so maybe that'll generate more questions.
I just want, hopefully not, I just wanted to clarify the head nodding and head shaking and let you all know what I was talking about. I wanted to, there are two issues that were touched on, and one is public records and one is public accessibility of the database, and those are two separate issues. So if a town board or committee is collecting data, that data is subject to the public records law. So if anyone requested it, the town would have to produce that information. So it couldn't be maintained under a password, for instance, and kept confidential. That said, the town is under no obligation to make it publicly accessible, make it a searchable database on its website, for instance. So I just wanted you to keep those two concepts in mind as you build the database.
Franny?
So did you say that it's not necessary to make it accessible? It would be accessible if a committee is collecting it, it's accessible under the public records law, but then you said something about making it publicly accessible online is not necessary, you're saying?
Correct. So if
But
someone
it could be done. It can be done, though.
If someone requests the documents, they're public records, so they have to be produced. That does not mean the town has an obligation before there is any request to make them publicly accessible.
But if we chose to make it publicly accessible, we could.
There's no issue under the public records law with that.
Okay, thanks. So, I had little random things. I totally agree with the LEQ. I thought it was something like, I didn't even recognize it as, I don't know.
I'm probably going to get grief from my EDC colleagues for this as well now.
It could just be
You know what,
6 to 10 employees.
That's the biggest thing they give me grief for.
Yeah. No, this is all fantastic. I'm really happy that after these false starts, it's finally getting done. The Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce, it seems like, is another source of
Yes.
a start, I assume.
And Mr. Tyndall would like to say something.
Well, the chamber is a member of the EDC. In fact, they're entitled to 2 full-time voting chairs on the committee, as the committee is currently constituted. We think that relationship is a partnership that we should work to preserve. So to the extent that we can coordinate the information that we have about Acton with them and vice versa, we think everybody wins. So we're going to work hard to keep that going.
On an amusing note, it might have been when Selby and I met with Steve. He met with the current chair of the Middlesex West Chamber of Commerce, and your question was actually posed as, well, gee, they'd be a great source of information. Turns out they're really interested in the system that we create, but they want us to give them their information. So
I know how hard it is to collect this information. Which was the town whose system was most like what you pictured?
Westford is the town that actually had a database. In fact, they actually had 2. One was built from the Westford equivalent of the town clerk's list of, I think our town clerk's spreadsheet's got like 6,000 entries in it, of which, I'll pull a number out of you, roughly 20% are probably duplicates or dead or whatever. That was a small amount of information for a large number of businesses. They also built a, I'm not sure of good adjectives. It was smaller in terms of number of entries, wider in terms of the amount of information they captured per business. And this was probably mostly retail. So they had like a couple of hundred businesses with maybe, I'll say, I don't know, 10 to 20 bits of information per business. The challenge they had with the first one was what I talked about before with data maintenance, that it was sort of, it was a static snapshot, and that's what it is. And it ages, and the data gets stale very quickly.
It seemed like it would be easiest to have this online, so that, or are you going to have tablets with you or something? Or are you going to have them fill this out, or you fill this out?
That's one of the options we are exploring, where we could actually have a system that has a tablet interface, so that we're going around and when we're actually talking to the businesses, we're doing tap, tap, tap,
Yes.
save, and poof, you've got.
Yes, I highly recommend that.
Well,
That would-
I do too, except that we need to find a system that will allow that.
Oh, I could even do it. I could just put Excel on my
What?
tablet. Anyway, that sounded rude, but
What?
considering how low-tech I am, no, that sounded rude when I said that, I didn't mean, but I think you'll find a way. And also, I was just going to say two more things. Incentives, I was thinking about if you wanted to give the businesses incentives, I could think of ways that they could benefit from it, in addition to getting information about other businesses. It could be transportation vouchers, which is something I'm going to mention. I sent an email, which you probably saw,
Yeah.
about my thoughts about how Crosstown Connect could use this information. And also advertising. I was thinking if you needed some kind of incentive for people to yearly or every 5 years update their information, there could be some kind of incentive where the town, in some ways, by sharing their information, such and such company has updated their information. Have you? They get some advertising out of it.
So the question you just asked, if we have to start worrying about having our 5-year update to the system, we are going to be ecstatic. It means we've massively succeeded.
I think you will.
So,
I just wanted to share what I wrote to you today, because that I was glad you're going along. And there's a simultaneous effort underway by Doug Halley as our transportation coordinator and by Crosstown Connect to let businesses know about the transportation services that are available to their employees and clients, both by being in Acton, which is a municipal member of Crosstown Connect, and by potential business membership in Crosstown Connect as their own business. And this effort to reach the companies has been really slow. It could be helped if the volunteers could incorporate some transportation communications as they poll the companies. It could be even providing literature, and I brought some of the Crosstown Connect, if you're interested, literature that goes to businesses. The information that Crosstown Connect, the services that they provide to businesses who join is very helpful. So providing that literature, establishing a communication link between Crosstown Connect and the business, so that we can keep them apprised of bus route changes, new services, etc. Even just getting their email address will be helpful. And also collecting the travel data. When you collect how many employees there are, a really helpful piece of information would be where do those employees come from and how do they get to work. That would be a very useful piece of information. So I don't know if that's something you would want to get afterwards and have the town use the information, but it could also be something that you would just collect at the time. That's all.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman? I think that you're on a valuable point, which is that as we get deeper into this kind of exercise, we discover more and more ways that the town can benefit from the availability of a database like this. And so what happens, though, is that the number of questions that you want to ask and the size of the effort and so on expands exponentially to the point where you can break it. You can really break it. Consider this: a great many businesses in Acton are not based in Acton. The person who stands behind the cash register is an employee. They may be a minimum wage type person. They may report to somebody who's got a half a dozen similar businesses who is not even close to being in Acton. And so as time goes on, you find that in order to get the person who can give you responsible answers, you may find yourself talking to somebody in Cincinnati. And consequently, the need is to keep it simple. As Larry indicated, the best way to really screw up a project is to make it too complicated to begin with. So our effort is going to be to keep it streamlined, keep it manageable, and then as time goes on, once we've got it digested, to figure out what the most valuable potential pathways are going forward and build into those. So it may be some time before we explore Avenue A or B. I'm completely sympathetic to your notion that it would be great to have that information as far as transportation is concerned. But it may be a considerable period of time, as you can see, the amount of effort that's going to be required to just get the simple database populated in terms of having respondents available that can answer your questions. That I think should indicate that we're going to be very conservative about expanding it too fast. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to thank you for this effort, you especially, Larry, and the larger EDC, because it's obviously something that will be quite useful to us, and it's, you are all volunteers, and so doing this and the effort that it's going to take to populate and maintain this is greatly appreciated. I had a couple questions. Under the business type and business subtype categories, are you thinking of those as like drop-down categories or just filling it in?
My most recent thoughts are let people fill it in, and then we will do some sort of assemblage.
Category.
I put together in one of my plans probably 10 pages of hierarchical, well, you've got retail, and under retail, this is where it gets crazy.
Right.
You've got food, and under food, you've got restaurants and fast food, and under fast food, you've got this and that and the other thing, and so the question is, how deep do you go?
Right.
Do you try to do it hierarchical, or do you try to do it with people just sort of fill stuff in? And then you do something like this, and you get into a category like, I don't know, some landscaping or something like that, and you don't need 6 levels of hierarchy. It's like, we do trees, and we do grass, and we do flowers. You're done. So, I'm sort of dancing around giving you a direct answer.
No, you're still thinking about it.
We'll see what kind of information.
Right, I'm just thinking in terms of when you're going to filter it.
The problem with a drop-down, especially if it's designed by somebody who knows nothing like me, is, I'm talking about the content now, is that I'll probably be batting about 500, miss half of the things.
Right.
Well, gee, you've got food and you've got hot dogs, but really hamburgers or something like that. So.
And then I'm wondering if kind of internally, again, just thinking about how we're going to use this, different boards and committees and staff are going to use this, as if not asking people this, but if there's some way internally within the database, when they've entered their address, if it can populate what their zoning district is, and then if they're in a historic district, and then this is probably something that might have to be a question, though maybe it's something you could figure out with the building commissioners. Do they have a historic property on their, is their building historic property, or is it on part of their property? Because I think that would then be useful information if, say, I think I'm passing this down to you, I suppose. I think that if if I'm town staff and I'm using this and we're talking about zoning changes, it would be great if I could say, well, I want to do this, sort of by limited business zones or, whatever. So again, not something you have to ask them, but if there's a way to kind of, you put in the address and there's a way to populate that.
So I've thought about that because one of my questions when I was sort of talking about the how much and how many nail salons are there in West Acton? That was partly a smart aleck question and partly was real. It could, between hair and nail and whatever, you probably need 2 hands to count them all. So that says you need some way of encoding West Acton or East Acton or whatever. And I'm not exactly sure how to do that, but capturing the address will allow us to do a lot of it.
Right.
Not so much the zoning district, but at least, we're in North Acton on Great Road west of 27 or something like that.
We started this effort 8 years ago, as some of you know, and we ran into just a buzzsaw of complications in terms of it doesn't work if you go this way, it only works if you go that way on alternate Thursdays when it's raining, It's just nutty. I think that there are some things that we can do with the people that are assembling the information to begin with. Perhaps somebody who's actually answering a questionnaire, or somebody who is out talking to somebody face-to-face who represents the EDC. But a lot of this is going to be, in subsequent periods, is going to be management. It's what we want to get out of it. And so one of the key questions that was posed to the EDC when we first started this, a guy stood up in this room when we had all the signboards up and we were asking for advice, and one of these guys stood up and said, listen, you guys don't know what you're doing. And he said, I'm saying that as nicely as I can to you people, but he said, until you know how many businesses you have and what they do, you can't market it. because you don't know where the gaps are, you don't know where the opportunities are, you don't know where you're overrepresented, and you don't know what constitutes good quality performance and doesn't. And so the question about being in a historic district, being in a particular zoning area, whether or not you're in an area that's of special interest, it's not today, but a couple of years from now, we're going to designate, say, some part of town as something that's very special interest to us. We can come back later and manage the database and put in information based on addresses and whether or not the business is actually located in town or whether its headquarters is somewhere else. All of that requires a lot of maintenance. And so I think that once the data is assembled, then we figure out what to do with it and who should do it and how we're going to manage it on a long-term basis. But to say that we have all that figured out at the front end, we don't. And I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
So let me actually, one more bit of that. That the kind of, when you asked about historic district and this and that and the other thing, there's a whole bunch of information, not just address and other, we can glean from the information we're gathering.
Right.
So what would be really awful would be if we go out and we ask 10 questions and there's some bit of information, like what's the hair color of the owner or something like that, that if only we had asked that when we did our initial canvas, we could have all kinds of information. And now we got to go back, we got to ask everybody again. It's the kind of thing you can't glean. We're hoping that the questions we're asking are the ones that really capture the essence, and there's a bunch of derivative information that we can calculate from that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And hopefully,
them that.
we haven't missed some really crazy important.
Right, yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting asking them what zoning district or anything they're in. The other question I had is the sort of first paragraph in the letter, says that it will be available to the businesses to connect with each other and to improve communication, and how are you thinking that will work? So is this being...
That's part of the, I think Franny asked the question, and our esteemed counsel, who's head shaking, I can't see. That's going to be part of the, once we get this thing established and working, whatever, as we expand the audience of users, that's sort of what we cover in there.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think, again,
So,
just being
I
careful,
guess-
because it would be great if you could give them a username and a password, but we can't really do that, so, or I think there might be concerns with that. So I think it would be good, but before handing out the letter, you might want to check on how much of this you can sort of say.
Yes.
It's always good to run things by council, is the short answer. But no,
Yes.
again, thank you very much.
That has been already pointed out to me.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you. I think
It's not just,
great.
you don't just do it before the board and
Right,
talk
right.
to Steve or whatever.
There's like 12
There are other
layers of-
people you got to talk to as well.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you very much.
Seems like an enormous amount of work. A lot of this is available online. I mean, we have all the licenses in town. That's every retail or every food service, or if you sell any liquor at all, we have all of that. You may be able to go to the Secretary of State and get all corporations that are in Acton or something. You obviously consider the personal visit to be an important part of this. Is that as opposed to a mailing?
We're trying something, it could crash and burn, but we've tried the other approaches and they haven't worked, and we're going to see how we do here. And if we could get 5 of me to do this, we think we can.
That was going to be my next question. I mean, I've heard your name. It's how many other volunteers do you have?
It's a secret.
Steve and Selby have talked about a couple of days where we might be able to get some additional help, but.
Okay. Oh, yeah, right, senior workers. Okay, that's a great idea. Then really my only other question was to change this, if somebody moves out of town or they change ownership of the business or something, and say it's a sole proprietorship, which is the last thing on your agenda, I mean, who's going to keep that? I mean, I suppose they would know that because you file a UCC statement. If you leave town, I guess you're supposed to pull it. But what about a corporation if they just leave? I mean, who's going to know that, or who's going to report that? You're going to ask all the businesses in town if there's any change in ownership or whatever. So tell the town.
I'll give you the honest answer here. In terms of getting the information associated with changes, especially like businesses leaving, The second part of it is, well, we need somebody on the town staff who can delete the entry from the database. And that's the easy part. And the hard part is your question was, how do we figure it out? And it's going to be, right now, it's a bunch of ill-defined processes in my plan. It's like, well, we're going to figure this out. And we will. But part of the response is, you know, if you've got something in there and it takes us 2 or 3 months to figure out that XYZ left town, what's the harm? And it's my response, especially when we're asking how many and how much kinds of questions, is it's not that big a deal. We'll get it, and the data will be good to some level of, you know, it's maybe a couple of months stale, but that's it. It's not, it gets older and older with every passing month. It's we're keeping track of, we're getting new businesses into the system, let's say on a weekly basis. We hear about something, and within a week it's in the system. And old systems, maybe they hang around for a few weeks before we get rid of them. But so what?
Okay. Thank you. So I guess the next question I have is, what are you asking from the board? I mean, I'm not sure we need to vote this. This would be a sense of the board that would support this effort.
A sense of the board would be terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I see unanimous sense of the board here that that it's a good idea, and the town staff support it, and we support it as well.
Well, we have 4 other subcommittees that are boiling away on the back burners at this point, so we'll be back to see you later. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the letter of non-opposition for Mass Wellspring. Yeah, there you go.
Good evening, and thank you, Chairperson and members of the board. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my request this evening, and I promise you it's a very brief request. It's less than 1 page. As you may recall, my name is Dr. Stephanie Lipton, and I'm the president of Mass Wellspring, and I appeared before you last summer requesting a letter of support or non-opposition for our dispensary organization, to which the board voted unanimously to offer a letter of non-opposition. We are now completing our application process, and we should be receiving a provisional license fairly soon. And we are purchasing a property at 18 Powder Mill Road, which is the liquor store on Powder Mill Road. In the letter of non-opposition, the Massachusetts Department of Health requires a template that includes the following statement. The name of the board, which would be the Acton Board of Selectmen, has verified with the appropriate local officials that the proposed RMD facility is located in a zoning district that allows such use by right or pursuant to local permitting. Last year, I met with Roland Bartle at the Planning Department to discuss suitable locations for a dispensary site. And at that meeting, it was determined that RMDs best fall under the category of healthcare facilities. 18 Powder Mill Road is located in the PM district, which is zoned where healthcare facilities are allowed by right. So tonight I'm requesting that the Board of Selectmen give permission to Mr. Ledoux to add the sentence to his letter of non-opposition, which he presented to us and was dated July 9th of 2015. So basically the letter that was presented was good. It did not have the information about zoning because at the time we did not have a dispensary site, and it's been a very long and arduous process trying to find a suitable site that takes security and the community into consideration.
Okay, before we ask questions, let me make sure I'm clear on this.
Sure.
I thought there were 2 separate requirements as part of this process. You're saying this is all under that requirement that you file that letter that we don't oppose it. You're also supposed to have a statement there that it's allowed by right in the zoning district.
There is the letter that is needed, but the Department of Health wants to verify that everything has been checked, that the town is aware of where that site is and that it is zoned for that location, because there have been problems in the past with other dispensary groups trying to open up dispensary sites in areas that were not zoned for that use. So they just want to clarify, because they end up giving provisional licenses, and then they have to put everything on hold and freeze it because there's some sort of complication where there's a dispensary site that's not zoned for that use. So in the letter, they actually want that within the letter in one sentence, in the sentence that I read to you.
Okay, so is this a new requirement? And if
No,
it isn't,
yeah.
why didn't you wait until you had a site to come and ask us for the letter in the first place? Why did you bifurcate it like that?
We asked you for the letter because it is very, very difficult to find a dispensary site. And so what we did in the past was we found a site, but then we would have to approach the Board of Selectmen, and everything was up in the air at the Department of Health with the first round. So now they tried to clarify the process, and so it is more efficient to get approval from the town first and then try to find a site. And the problem is that there is this, because Acton does not have an overlay district, the state default takes effect in terms of zoning. And within the rules and regulations, there's a 500-foot buffer zone where children cannot commonly congregate. And the Department of Health defines where children commonly congregate as a place where children will go to music studios, dance studios, martial arts studios, any place where children are meeting. It just has to be once a week.
Yeah.
And so it becomes incredibly difficult to find a location that is both secure for the community and is not within that 500-foot buffer zone. So this is basically, this is a pharmacy, but we have greater restrictions because, CVS and Walgreens, they can be within a shopping plaza with a jiu-jitsu studio. We cannot. So every property that we found ended up being within 500 feet of this buffer zone. So it's taken this long to find this property. And so now that we have the property, this has to be included within the letter.
Okay. Franny?
Sorry, Janet. I just wanted to, what is within 500 feet of this building? And I don't have a problem with it, but it does seem like it's sort of like easier to get a town to have no opposition when there's not a site. I mean, this is a sort of practical way that the companies can come to a town. First, is it okay generally? And then, the big time when people are really thinking about, is it okay, there's not a site to look at. And then, when you actually have a site, then it's like tonight, and this seems like a smaller decision, but this actually is the bigger decision because we're actually approving by writing this letter, saying we are okay with that site.
Well, my understanding is it's actually up to the planning department, and that's why we met with Roland several times. So what the role of the Board of Selectmen, my understanding is the role is to either say, yes, we approve, or we don't oppose a dispensary being cited in Acton. The next part of that is to get approval from the planning department first to have it categorized. What is a dispensary? Because there is no overlay district in Acton. Other towns have overlay districts, or they implemented overlay districts. And so when we talked to Roland, it was determined that a medical marijuana dispensary would be considered a healthcare facility. And so we would need to find zoned areas that accommodate healthcare facilities.
Right, so
that's what we did.
What is within 500 feet? I don't have it. I should
Yeah,
bring it
it's
from that.
it's the liquor store that has the angled roof.
Oh, it's on Powder
Yeah,
Mill.
it's on Powder
As
Mill
you go
Road.
toward, I was picturing Sudbury Road, I think. So you stay on Powder Mill, which is Route 62. It's on Route 62.
And
then it's on the right.
And next door is a sort of an industrial warehouse. I think it was recently sold to a gentleman. I know his name is Vinny. I don't know his.
So it's
excuse me,
across
his last
from
name.
Wendy's, but it's not within 500 feet?
Well, Wendy's doesn't constitute a place where children commonly congregate. So restaurants, ice cream parlors don't constitute that because children aren't meeting there on a weekly basis for an activity.
So what is within 500 feet? What other businesses?
Yeah, very few, because there's so much space between them. So they're all just generally businesses that don't include children, classes where children congregate.
Okay, and if a jiu-jitsu studio wants to move there,
Once we are established and we submit our application, we're grandfathered in. So if they want to move in after that time period, that's their choice. But,
they won't be prevented from moving in?
no.
Okay, you
Yeah.
just can't...
We can't
you
move in
can't
if they're
assert
already
yourself on
established.
them.
Right,
Okay.
right. And we have looked at over 20 properties this past year, and it is, you'd think it'd be easy in Acton, but it's incredibly difficult to find property. I'm sorry, yes.
Go ahead, Janet.
Yeah, I just had a question about that building. Are you going to reuse it? I mean, it may or may not be relevant, but it seems like a really peculiar building to set up a dispensary in, because there's a lot of glass, and I assume that you want to have a fairly secure place. So I didn't know if you were
Yes.
planning to rebuild or shift the building or do something.
Right. So if you read the regulations, you would probably know that the level of security is far greater than what traditional pharmacies are required to have. So we will be implementing, we'll either put up walls there or put up glass that's not breakable, and there'll be a security fence, most likely a security fence inside or outside. Our security person is going to determine how to do that. But we've already had several people evaluate it for security, and they said it's doable. It's doable to prevent people from coming in. And so far, thus far, because these security measures are so tight, there have not been issues with other dispensaries in Massachusetts having break-ins or people trying to get inside who should not be, because the precautions have been taken.
And are you going to be growing on site, or are you going to get your supply from elsewhere?
We're going to be growing on site, and we will petition the planning board to see if we can put a greenhouse on the site. We can have part of the facility as a grow facility and the downstairs as retail. We want to try to contain everything in one area to keep it more secure that way, rather than shuttling back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that, has the rest of your application, outside of finding a place, but has the rest of the application that you'll be submitting to be DPH stayed the same from what you presented to us a year ago?
Yes, I'm trying to remember what I presented to you a year ago. We probably submitted additional information we had to submit the business plan information, and there was a modification with some of the rules. So when Charlie Baker became governor, he sort of relaxed the rules a bit to make it easier for applicants to get up and running, because this ballot question passed in 2012, and it's 2016 and only 6 dispensaries are open. So patients cannot get access to their medicine. So he's trying to get things going more quickly. And they are moving. It's still at a snail's pace. It's a lot better than it was the first time around. But they do ask for additional information. So this was one of the aspects that they asked for compared to the first time they had the application process, that the whole zoning situation be resolved, that the town understands that this is where a dispensary is going to be, and there is no confusion about that, because it sets everybody back if they have to start all over again.
And are you still planning on doing the delivery part
Yes.
of this?
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's a big
all
part.
of that has stayed the same. What you're planning to do, the security
Oh, yes.
measures that you spoke about,
Correct.
all of those things have not changed? since you
None of that
presented
has
to us?
changed.
Okay.
Yeah, none of that has changed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering if the deputy chief who gave us an update about what was going on with dispensaries when we last discussed this, I wonder if you have an update or anything new to share with us to inform our decision here. Thank you.
Last year, I spoke about speaking with Chief Mary Butler from Salem Police. I reached out to her. I have not got an answer back. I'm assuming she's on vacation. But I haven't seen anything through any of the advisories through the chiefs of police from Massachusetts about issues at the different dispensaries.
Great, thank you.
And that's what I've heard when I read the Boston Globe and other local papers, that there have been no issues, no security issues. And I think traffic was one problem at the dispensary in Brookline, because it's right on Route 9. But at other locations, they haven't had an issue, and they hired a security guard to direct traffic, so that would no longer be a problem.
I'm sure you saw the article in the Globe this morning. I
On
have some-
Sunday?
Huh?
On Sunday. The Sun,
No,
was it today? Oh, it was today?
on the agreements that towns have been
Oh, the
making with...
host agreements?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in why you're set up as a nonprofit. I mean, you compare yourselves to pharmacies, they pay taxes, they pay real estate taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming if you're a nonprofit corporation, you're not going to pay real estate taxes. Why is that?
That is how the Department of Health established the program. They wanted them to be non-for-profit organizations. I don't know why, but every one of them has to be non-for-profit.
Would you be willing to negotiate a payment in lieu of taxes agreement?
I would have to get back to the board members to discuss that with them. I will tell you, when I read that article, I had heard about these host agreements, and the difference between our dispensary organization and these others that have been successful thus far in the process in getting their letters and their provisional licenses is that our business model is based on providing medicine to underserved communities, so to people that can't afford the prices that are being asked for the medicine. So I know I believe there's one dispensary that is charging $350 an ounce for this medicine, and there's a good portion of people in Massachusetts who are disabled or infirmed, who don't work, they collect disability, and they cannot afford those prices for medical cannabis. So our business model is in a staggered system to help those individuals try to obtain this medicine and to provide free delivery so they don't need to leave their homes if they're too ill. So our business model is very different. I don't know of any other dispensary group that is having a primary delivery model, number one. And as far as I know, the 6 groups that are up and running, none of them provide delivery services.
None of them provide delivery services?
Delivery services. Okay. So if we were to negotiate an agreement, we would likely have to change our business plan. We'd have to start all over again. So it would probably take another year to resubmit all the information to the Department of Health if we had to do that. And that is not an easy prospect to have to go through that all over again.
What was the number you gave us? You're saying these other dispensaries sell an ounce for what?
Yeah, I believe it's $350 an ounce. That's what I had heard the last time.
And what does your business plan say you'll sell?
Oh, it depends on your need and what your income level is. So those people that can afford it will help to subsidize those that cannot and to help maintain the delivery program. So we're not, you know, the numbers that they're coming up with, you know, when we crunch the numbers, and we have a really good mathematician who's crunching these numbers, those numbers are not sustainable for those dispensaries. What I believe is that they're banking on recreational passing, and then it'll be a windfall for them. If recreational doesn't pass, they're in deep trouble because I can't see, the numbers just don't add up. If you compare the numbers here in Massachusetts to Colorado, and we have similar population densities, it just doesn't add up. There's no way they can afford to maintain those expensive host agreements. But if recreational passes, they have a better chance at doing that, but the latest poll numbers show that that's not the case. And fewer residents of Massachusetts appear to want recreational marijuana to pass. So there's not a very strong likelihood that it's going to happen. So you'll probably see many, if not most, of those dispensaries either go under or not continue in the process. Most of them have maxed out trying to get 3 licenses so that they can maintain a monopoly, because under the recreational ballot question, those dispensaries that are up and running are the only ones that are allowed to grow for several years, and they're grandfathered in, so they have a huge jump start against anybody else trying to get in. And that's how the ballot question was written, because it was written by people who have dispensary licenses. So our group, we're asking for 1 dispensary license. We asked the Department of Health for a second one, but we would not be grandfathered into recreational, so we only have the 1, because our focus really is on medicine. We have a chemist that's going to be extracting THC and CBD to provide medicine in forms that are more amenable to some patients. So people that can't vaporize or smoke and need to take tinctures. So our business model is very, very different from the giants. So if we were to give a host agreement, we would probably need to cut back on what we're going to be giving to those people that are underprivileged and underserved. And that's just the honest truth. But I can take it to the members and discuss it with them. But
Yeah,
I do
I mean,
know
I
that
I understand what you're saying. On the other hand, you are taking a tax-paying business off the market, and that's less income to the town, so.
Sure.
What about federal taxes? I mean, you don't have 501c3 status under the federal, on the IRS guidelines.
Yeah,
do you?
I don't feel comfortable discussing it because I don't understand the tax code. So I'm a medical person, but I can, if you want to meet again, I can have the person who handles that in our attorney.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would be giving tax-free status to illegal, in their eyes, operations.
Well,
but-
things may change. There's talk that Obama may take medical marijuana off the Schedule I listing, and if he
Yeah.
does that,
Okay.
all of this
Yeah.
is moot.
Yeah,
All of it's moot,
yeah.
which it should be, in my opinion.
What happens if the referendum does pass? Are you just going to convert to a retail operation?
Not in Acton, no. I mean, we could open a site. We have a site that we can use in Porter Square for recreational, but our focus really is on the healthcare aspects.
Okay.
A lot of the other groups are big business. We're
Yeah.
healthcare providers, so we're very different, and our business model is very different. So I can tell you now, there's one group, I think in Burlington, they're paying $250,000 for a host agreement. We would go bankrupt if we had to pay that kind of money.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even be able to get
Well,
started.
yeah, I mean, I think, to be fair, in the articles, the bigger cities, Worcester, Springfield, there were more applicants than they were going to give out licenses, so the people who got the licenses were willing to pay,
Right.
pay those agreements, I guess. But-
Right, and these host agreements, I mean, they're formulated with the idea that if a business is opening and there's a security risk, or they're placing an undue burden on a community, then they should give something to community to compensate for that. But these host agreements are being used for things other than that. They're being used for things within towns and cities that have absolutely nothing to do with the dispensaries. So now it's becoming a bidding war, with the highest bidder winning a letter of approval or non-opposition. And so you end up not getting the best applicants, you end up getting the wealthiest applicants. And in my mind, that's not the best form of health care.
Yeah, they're using them to fund after-school programs and other charitable entities in town. I mean, I suppose
Some
your
of them.
response would be, we're helping the lower-income patients. who
Right, we're
need to-
already charitable in that we're helping the lower-income people, but the idea was that initially that they would ask for these host agreements to pay for additional police officers.
Right.
Well, it turns out that they don't really need them because there has not been any security threats. And yet these dispensaries are still having to pay this sort of money for police presence that's not needed or not want, or, it's not needed. And in some areas, they wanted host agreements because they thought it would tie up traffic in those areas, and that turned out not to be the case. So I'm in total agreement. A host agreement is great if the business is placing an undue burden on the community, but if it's being used to try to get as much money out of a group to open up a business, I frankly have a problem with that. I would like to be treated like any other pharmacy. That's how I'd like to see it. We're a healthcare facility, and that's that. So that's my opinion.
Do we have a copy of your business plan that explains this, that you're going
I
to set
don't
your
know.
prices based on what the income is of the patient that you're serving?
Yeah,
Do we
the
have that?
Department of Health has everything, and they redact a bunch of the information. So we had this problem last time where we needed to show information, and it was redacted by the Department of Health. So I don't know if I can get that to you, or if they permit it, because there's sensitive information in there. If you require that, I can certainly check with the Department of Health. I will warn you, it takes them weeks sometimes to get back to us, and sometimes they don't even get back to us.
Frankly, I believe you, but I'm a belt and suspenders guy, so I'd rather
Yeah.
see it in writing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. And I will tell you, we did receive a letter of non-opposition from the town of Weston, and they did not require any host agreement because they understood our business model. So we were able to present
Okay.
some of that information,
So,
and they
how
had
did
no
you-
problem.
I mean, did you give them enough documents to
No, they didn't
confirm
ask-
what you're saying, or they
Yeah,
just took
no,
your
they
word
didn't
for it?
ask for proof.
Okay.
We explained to them, well, our business person explained to them how it would be set up and what it is we're trying to accomplish, and they understood, they got it. So, and, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Now, are all these businesses still having to deal in cash, too? You can't take credit cards or checks?
No, there's the dispensary in Brookline, takes, I believe they take debit cards. Century Bank is pretty much the only bank that's willing to do business with dispensaries. So they have a security service that will come every day to pick up your cash if there's cash.
Okay.
And they, I believe they supply ATMs if people need them. And I believe that they're the ones who are supplying the debit cards. So things are changing, but very slowly. The banks are all scared. Everybody's scared because this is new territory. I know in Colorado, and I believe in California, the state is initiating a credit union for dispensaries so that they can bank. They can do banking, they can do payroll through checks rather than have to do payroll through cash. So I think Massachusetts is going to be headed that way if Obama doesn't take it off Schedule 1 listing.
Okay, and you will also have appointments for people besides the delivery service. Didn't you have appointments for people who
If they
signed
wanna
up
come
and
in.
would come and
Yeah.
get an appointment? They'd have
Sure.
to be pre-arranged to
Sure,
come and
yep.
pick up their medicine.
Sure, yep. And that way we keep, people in and out without people lingering. So, and we know who's coming and who's going for security reasons.
So I'm just wondering about if the referendum were to pass. Again, you say you're not going to convert, you're going to keep, is there going to be two types of services, a medical marijuana service under this referendum and a recreational use store?
Yeah, it's not really clear on how that's going to work. I think that if you have a license, you're allowed to I believe, I may be mistaken, you're allowed to open up a recreational store. I don't know if you're allowed to convert automatically to recreational. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. But our plan is to stay medicinal because we have a whole chemistry section, and it's, you don't do chemistry just for people, to smoke marijuana. You do it for the medicinal benefits. So that's a big investment that's in our business plan.
Yeah, can I just ask for the record, we get some note from Roland that confirms that he's told her that, or did you already check with him?
That should have been in your packet.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Should have been.
I'm not sure if I saw
Roland
that.
sent an email.
Yeah.
Thought I forwarded it to you, no? Okay.
I just want to make sure there was no condition or some kind of, or something else of it. Okay.
And we did check with him that area, and he said that area was open.
Yeah. No, I know the site.
Okay.
I go there once in a while myself, but. Yeah, okay. I don't have any further questions. Any other questions of board members? I guess the question before us is, are we going to sign the additional statement that the applicant's requesting?
Sure, I think we approved this letter and sort of the idea of non-opposition a year ago, and I understand it's slightly different now that there's an actual location, but it's an actual location that meets our zoning bylaws. And I don't think much has changed. You're fortunate that this board hasn't changed in a year, so that's worked in your favor. So I don't see any reason not to modify the letter to include that statement.
I don't know if council's looked at the template language and you have any issue with it. If we
I
just
have a template here too, if you need to see it.
So I haven't looked at the template language, but the only note I was going to make was the point that Peter was making is that any vote you take should be subject to confirming the information provided here to whatever extent the board feels it needs to confirm it. I would recommend at least confirming the zoning status, but you may also want to confirm the business plan aspects as well. I leave that to your discretion.
I thought we had seen the business plan a year ago.
Did we get one?
I don't know.
What we submitted to DPH, we...
Sorry, can you just move?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I believe that we submitted that information to you last time. It hasn't changed, but what we submit to DPH is, once they receive it, the information's redacted. So, and I think we mentioned that too the last time I spoke to the board, that disabled children will receive free medical marijuana. Veterans will receive either free or reduced rates for their medicine. And then according to your income level, you can qualify for rate reductions.
So the process is you get the license from the state, and then you have to apply for, well, we've got to go through zoning, so, I mean, you probably won't have to go through the planning board if you have an upright business, but you will have to get a commercial site plan approval by the Board of Selectmen, which is us.
Okay.
So, I mean, Steve has already said that he got the email from Roland, so I'm confident with that about the zoning status.
I mean, nothing has changed since the last time when you gave me the letter of non-opposition.
Right.
Everything is the same, with the exception of some of the rules, a little more lax to allow more dispensaries to try to open.
Yeah. I mean, I just speaking personally, I would probably revisit this whole issue of wanting to see more details about your business plan. And maybe we did see it a year ago, but I've seen a lot of paperwork from between a year ago and today, so I can't remember, frankly. And secondly, this whole issue of whether you would be willing to pay something in lieu of taxes, as part of that site plan review. I mean, I'm not sure that we could require that, but we can certainly ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we talk about mitigating, it depends on who goes there. You have mostly a model where you deliver to people, but will you also have people going there?
Yes, if people want to come in, they can schedule an appointment and they can come and then they can.
I think in that case, especially if you have low-income people or people who don't drive, you will want to get into our public transportation system and know about it.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good point.
If there's ever any question of mitigation, that would be a relevant one. Also, I don't understand, I'm just curious why the Department of Health has to redact information. What personal information is there about?
I don't know. When we saw the first time around, when we saw what they redacted, we were sort of shaking our heads. Their legal counsel determines what needs to be redacted and what doesn't. So I guess financial statements are typically redacted, personal information, social security numbers, addresses of the executive boards of these dispensaries. There's a lot of information. Security is huge. You'll see most of that information redacted because they don't want people knowing what sort of security systems are going to be implemented.
But when you're talking about the model, you were talking about like a staggered pricing system where people of a certain income wouldn't, or disability wouldn't have to pay as much and what they would pay. That's the kind of information I think you were wanting to see, right? I just can't imagine why they would hide that information.
I can request. I have to first make the request with the Department of Health. And as I said, they may not get back to me because the last time I requested information from the department, I did not get a response, and our attorney had to open up a conversation with them. So it's very difficult. It's sort of radio silence when they're in this process of reviewing applications. I can contact them and see if we can get that information, and I can speak to the other board members to see if that information can be gotten to you. I'll need to check with our legal counsel.
Yeah. Oh, Chief? Well, okay.
I need to check with the department to see that we can submit this information because...
The unredacted, you mean?
No, we submitted our application with the information. We have copies of our application, but my understanding is I'm not permitted to show you our entire application. I have to go through the Department of Health to check with them, to determine what portions of the application can be seen by the public, because this will be a public record once I present it, right? Oh, okay, from the Department of Health, yes, and that's
Yeah,
part of
that's
the...
fine. I'm not interested in security. I'd like to see the part of the business plan that says you
Okay.
price your products based on the income of the patient you're selling them to.
Okay.
I mean, that's a great idea if it's actually happening.
Okay.
Do you have other sites where you opened?
No, we're still going through the process. So Weston is another location that is allowing us to open a dispensary.
Yeah. All right, well, what's the board's pleasure?
I move that we, you were about to say it, so you can say it. Can you have the words?
I move that we provide a letter of non-opposition to Mass Wellspring, I don't know if that's the full name or not, to operate a registered marijuana dispensary in the town of Acton at 18 Powder Mill Road. And it's not clear to me whom we're supposed to be authorizing. Are we authorizing the town manager to sign, or?
We have a letter of non-opposition. I think the motion really should be that we're modifying the letter of non-opposition to include the statement that we verified, with the appropriate local officials that the proposed
Who signed
facility.
it, though? My point is-
Steve.
Did Steve, okay.
Right, so it's just, we
Well, I
have an
think that
existing letter.
I don't think we can just modify the letter. I think that we have to issue a new letter of non-opposition modifying the letter that we issued previously to Mass Wellspring, because this is a new name too, I think.
And we're still the same, so this is the issue, we're the same organization. When we started out with New England Wellspring, that was for the first round, we didn't receive a provisional license, and so we appealed it in the courts and we won the court decision. And so when it was going through the courts, we wanted to apply in the second round, but it would be problematic having a dispensary going through the court system on the one hand and another one trying to move forward faster than the one that's stuck in the court system. So we modified the name and reapplied as Mass Wellspring.
Okay, so with this letter that we're about to authorize the issuance of, is going to supersede whatever it is that we issued before to whatever business and whatever name, but it's a non-opposition letter. Okay, so I move that we provide a letter of non-opposition to supersede the previous, and Steve, you're going to have to go dig into the file to find out, to supersede the letter of non-opposition that we issued previously to whatever the predecessor name was, to Mass Wellspring to operate a registered marijuana dispensary in Acton at 18 Powder Mill Road, with the letter to be signed by the town manager on behalf of the town of Acton, pursuant to a vote taken at a duly noticed meeting of the Board of Selectmen today, July 25th. And this is all subject to verification with the appropriate local officials, with the planning department, that the proposed facility is located in a zoning district that allows such use by right or pursuant to local permitting.
So basically, it's that sentence that needs to be added to the letter that I received for Mass Wellspring the last time, July of last year.
But I think we can trust Steve to pull together something coherent that complies with.
Do I have a second?
Well, do you want to include seeing a copy of the business plan?
Oh, and then.
It doesn't have to be a unredacted copy.
With the subject to, and with the understanding that the applicant will also provide us with at least a redacted copy of the business plan.
Okay.
In a reasonably timely fashion. I don't want to put a deadline on this because we have to.
Yeah, the problem is we have a
You don't get the
deadline
letter till you
too.
give us the business plan.
Is
the
there
deadline.
anything else that we need, or, because I gather that we're basically, the town manager's confirmed that it's zoning, the zoning by right is permitted, so it's really the business plan that you are principally interested in.
What's your timeline?
We have a time constraint because our application will expire if we don't have everything settled. I believe it's before the beginning of November. And so I would have to come to the next Board of Selectmen meeting, is that correct?
It's just providing the town
No,
manager
you
a copy
could
of our
just
business
email
plan.
it, or email it to Lisa or whatever, but as long as we get it.
Okay.
But the understanding is we're not going to give you the letter until we get a copy of your redacted.
Okay.
It's not that we have to
Or-
review the business plan or anything like that, it's just we want a copy of it,
Okay.
probably to use then when we're discussing the site plan permit or whatever. But I will second Janet's motion.
Meandered all over the place.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Chief.
The police department would request, as we move forward, now that we have a site in place and a physical structure to look at, that we be involved with the security team and the security planning as we go forward, and whatever stages comes before any of the towns.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we'll have Olaf contact you and go over our security plan. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4 on Selectmen's business, fiscal year 17 sewer operation and maintenance rate setting. Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. I'm here to ask for a vote of the sewer commissioners for our FY17 billing schematic. In fact, I'm asking you to vote no change. We do set rates for the entire fiscal year. I've prepared and sent a memo to the board and would like to briefly review the bullets. The town has been providing public sewer services for 14 years. As the memo states, our operating costs are very stable. We pay approximately $600,000 per year to Woodard and Curran to operate and maintain the treatment plant and collection system. The contract is in place until 2020. It's noteworthy that pursuant to cost controls, our town manager negotiated a CPI escalator clause. They must have had a crystal ball upstairs because we've seen very low inflation risk and therefore have had very small increases the last few years. That has helped to keep that contract under control. As the board knows, we bill using winter water usage, and that eliminates summer activities from the calculation. We get these readings from the Acton Water District. Water consumption is down due to conservation efforts. Again, we're recommending no change in the rate. If the board approves this recommendation, the there'll be a small estimated decrease in the annual bill to the homeowner. Keeping in mind the main driver here is that our single-family residential customers are using, on average, less water. So if you think about it, if the rate stays the same, the volume goes down, the bill to the customers should be going down. I know it's late. Are there any questions before the board votes? And again, I'm looking for no change in the rates from FY16.
Being a member of the sewer district, I have one question. It looks like, by my calculations, usage went down about 6%, and the average bill is only going down 3%. Is that just because of averages, or what?
It is, Peter. In fact, Brian McMullen was looking over some of my calculations today. That's due to some of the data. We'll double-check that again, though. But yeah, the water usage was down significantly.
Okay. I have no further questions. Anyone else? Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the recommendation of the Finance Department regarding the sewer district rates for fiscal 17, specifically residential at 0.1215 cents per cubic feet, commercial at 0.1727 cents per cubic feet, and industrial at 0.1727 cents per cubic foot.
Somebody want to second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Next item on the On the agenda is town bylaw change discussion, appointment of assistant town moderator, and use of electronic voting at town meeting. And I understand our town moderator is going to give us some information about these issues.
I am, and I have town council here to back me up, so. Good evening. As you know, I have some ideas of making some changes to town meeting as we go forward, and some of them are being implemented as we speak in terms of web page and some further information. I've talked to both you, Peter, the chair, as well as Steve Ledoux about that. There are a couple of items that I want to implement that it turns out, based on discussions with Nina and Steve Anderson, require changes in the bylaw, or at least in their opinion, require changes in the bylaw. And actually, frankly, if you look at our town bylaw and our town charter, it gives virtually no guidance in terms of how town meeting actually operates. And so one of the things that I think we all agree we can do is add a little bit more formality to make it easier for people to understand what's going to happen at town meeting. There are some other changes just that I'm going to be rolling out that you all will be told about here soon. Some of them I'm going to talk about at the opening meeting of the Acton area League of Women Voters in September, so you might want to come to that. Anyway, the two items in particular that require bylaw changes are, one, I would like to begin the process of implementing electronic voting at town meeting. We have had several instances over the last 4 or 5 years where I think if we had had electronic voting, it would have not only greatly accelerated the speed with which town meetings business was conducted, but it would also have assured people of the accuracy of the vote as well as the timeliness. I attended Wayland's town meeting this year, where they have had electronic voting now for about 4 or 5 years. They use it actually for all of their votes, which, believe it or not, actually adds time, because when you can discern a voice vote, it's very quick. It takes about 5 seconds. The actual voting process with electronic voting takes about 40 seconds. But when we are faced with a 2/3 vote or a very contentious vote, for example, like we had with Kelly's Corner this year, we had with a resolution last fall at a special town meeting, I think electronic voting would greatly serve the folks at town meeting. Mark Hald is looking into a couple of different systems. I'm hoping to meet with him in the next couple of weeks to talk about that. My understanding is at least one of the vendors, in fact, the vendor that provides most of the systems to town meetings in Massachusetts, will provide a free demo or a free first time. So the hope is that we would put forward this article at a special town meeting in the fall, if you decide to have one. And obviously, I don't want these to be the only items on the agenda, so if you decide not to call a special town meeting, we'll put this off until April, and that's fine. But preferably, it would be nice if we could get this bylaw change to implement electronic voting so that it would then be available for April to actually do. But we would do sort of a little demo so people at town meeting could kind of see how it works and that sort of thing. So that is one of the bylaws changes that, if possible, I would like to see put on the special town meeting warrant, if there is one. The second is, may seem kind of strange, but it's to change the bylaw to really broaden the definition to allow the appointment or the election, really, of a temporary, or what I think of more as an assistant moderator. You know, we had a moderator who served the town for 40 years. Prior to that, he had not been a member of the Finance Committee. He had not been a member of the Board of Selectmen or 15 other committees in town. I can foresee a situation as moderator in the next couple of years where some people at town meeting might feel a little uncomfortable with me moderating a particular issue. Although I would certainly do my best to remain neutral, I can see where some people might see that there could be some bias. And frankly, furthermore, there were at this April's town meeting some issues that arose that had we had this bylaw in place, it would have made it easier to sort of have Dawn do certain things and have me do other things. And so by implementing this bylaw, it sharpens or clarifies the definition under Mass General Law of when the moderator is quote-unquote absent, and when town meeting can then elect a temporary moderator. So I think it would be useful to have this in place as well. Did I summarize that well, Council? Thank you. So I don't know whether board members have questions. Obviously, you're going to talk, and I'm going to stick around for it, about what you're going to do in October, if anything. But if you do something, I would appreciate if these could be put on the agenda. They have no financial implications, so I don't think the Finance Committee will be upset. And I am talking to them about all of this tomorrow night, so.
Katie?
My only question is with the temporary moderator, so is will town meeting would elect the temporary moderator, right? You're not proposing that there's, as part of the general elections, you're also electing a temporary moderator?
No, this would be town meeting at the outset of the meeting, electing a temporary moderator.
So it would just be that we do it as a practice, we elect the temporary moderator or assistant moderator, as opposed to in the past where we've sort of done it when it's come up during the meeting. Okay. No, I think that makes sense. Okay, thank you. I think it sounds good. Yeah, I think it says 1 year from election or until a different temporary moderator is elected. Right.
Right.
Well, it says 1 year from election or until whichever is sooner. So wouldn't it expire within a year? Yeah, it says the term of the temporary moderator shall be 1 year from election or until a different temporary moderator is elected by town meeting, whichever occurs sooner. Yeah.
So it'd be for an annual and then any other specials that year, and then we'd have to do it all over again the next year.
Right. Okay, I think that makes sense.
Because you have to elect a new moderator every year, too.
If what?
You have to elect a new moderator every year, too.
Right, exactly, right. No, I think, yeah.
Hopefully not a different one, but a new one.
Well, you know. We'll see how much you want me to get my presentations in, really.
I'm not clear who's electing or appointing.
Town meeting.
Town meeting at that town meeting.
Right, so we would start
So who would be nominated, like when?
I have some
normally do
ideas in mind.
We're not clarifying that right now, how that's happening. Okay.
And it's
So
just
there's
sort of
no
how we
nominating committee, the town moderator just nominates somebody?
No,
Or
typically,
maybe the meeting
typically
could
somebody
nominate
from the
people.
Board of Selectmen
typically
or
somebody from the board or
audience.
the moderator himself
Okay.
or herself has
All right.
suggested someone. If you remember in the past, we've done it when we thought there's going to be overflow and people have had to go to the auditorium. That's typically the reason why we've done it. And the moderator has usually suggested someone in that case. Don suggested Doré several times and that sort of thing.
Or we did it when Don had a.
You did it when Don had a conflict on the Discovery Museum.
On CBC, and
Yeah.
so we've done it before. It's just
Yeah.
now we would do it as a practice at the beginning of a meeting. And Franny, it wouldn't be necessarily at every town meeting. That's the thing about the year. So if we did it in April and then we held a special town meeting in the fall, that temporary moderator would still be a temporary moderator.
I like both suggestions, and as long as we limit who gets to nominate the temporary town moderator, so that we don't have some crazy person getting nominated from the floor, then I think they're very good suggestions, and I trust you to have done a lot more thinking about what would make practical sense than I have, so thank you for those both. And, so we just have to be aware of it when the time comes for us to finally decide whether we're going to have a fall town meeting.
That's all. It occurred to me, I was talking to Steve and then I talked to Peter last week about something else, and it occurred to me that I had met with Steve and Nina back in June, and then of course I disappear for the summer, and I realized it might be a good idea if you all were aware that we were thinking of doing this.
good.
I know you met when I wasn't there with the Commission on Disabilities, and
Yes.
I assume that with the choice of electronic voting machines, it would take care of people who have trouble typing into them, and also people who can't see them, or whatever, that we'd have ways that they can electronically vote.
Yeah, we met with them and we sort of went through with them how it works, and they seemed very enthusiastic. And you know, if we do implement it, there will be if we lease the system, which would be my recommendation as opposed to purchase it, the vendor supplies their own people, so there are help people. You do a demonstration at the beginning so everybody's comfortable, and you know, there always are going to be some issues, but based on my experience watching it work in Wayland, it was pretty easy, pretty seamless. And I know they have it, you've seen it down in Duxbury, right? Yeah.
Who sees the results when you do? Is it just you have the keypad with the results?
Yeah, it's shown on a screen, the moderator just announces the result, as is the way it's...
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like displayed somewhere.
No. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, discussion of fall town meeting, including closing the town warrant. Mr. Manager.
Well, as we discussed last time, I gave the board a draft policy that in essence had a recommendation for criteria for calling a special town meeting. And basically it came down to timeliness, that the board would consider calling a special town meeting if things just couldn't wait till annual town meeting. It could be the purchase of land that might not be available if we waited that long, or like we did last year, a litigation that kind of had a timetable to it, or some other timeliness factors. So I think the board generally endorsed that. They wanted, I guess, further discussion on when Franny was available. The other piece, that if we kind of think about those criteria, some of the items that to me are potential to be placed on the warrant is one, ratification of the fire contract. And you may ask, well, why can't we wait until April for the fire contract? Part of the provisions in the fire contract is that we would implement advanced life support. We have to give the regional entity we're a member of for paramedic service a 6-month notice that we're going to withdraw, and we have to give that by December 31st of this year to implement ALS in July of 2017. So in my mind, if we want to move ahead and implement paramedic service with our fire department, that's a timeless issue as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, we have the two items that Peter talked about, and I would probably argue that particularly electronic voting could be a timeless issue, because that way we could implement in April. And we are working on a potential land purchase. In talking to the owners of the property, they really don't want to wait till April town meeting. And this is a property that is, I might as well say, it's Lazaro property on River Street, and they are not real keen on waiting till April. So we're waiting for them to get back to us. We've shared our appraised value, but if in fact they're agreeable with our appraised value, they just don't want to wait till to April and to pursue maybe some other options. So those are some of the issues as I see them right now.
The other one we've talked about is the lease for the senior center. Is that?
Well, excuse me, I totally forgot that. At this point, council is looking at some at some of the issues. We did open the RFPs. The RFPs were ranked. We had two properties very close in terms of the RFP ranking. In looking at the price proposals, there's some question that council needs to look at. So I know Nina will be looking at that, and hopefully this week I'll get some guidance, and that will determine if we're moving forward or not, or whether we have to maybe put another RFP out.
Okay, so just to frame the discussion, it's my understanding we close the town warrant tonight. That means no more citizens petitions could be put on any
I would recommend that we keep it open a little for citizen petitions, because if the town meeting's the 5th of October, I think, if we set a date for mid-August, August 15th or something, it gives people, another 3 weeks or so to get petitions in.
So when will we actually have to,
Post the warrant?
yeah, well, what we talked about this, was it September, when's the first meeting in September?
The first meeting in September is like the 19th, so that would be basically the virtual drop dead date for the board to approve the warrant.
12th is, that's just special?
That's just special for
Concord?
Concord, right.
Okay, so,
19th and 26th, so.
okay, so we wait till September 19th, that would give us a time to get the warrant out if we wanted to do
We have
October 5th.
two-week notice, so it's going to be tight, but the 5th is not the 5th is a day of the week. No, the 5th of October, I forget what day it is of the week. It's a Wednesday, so we fall within the 2 weeks, easily fall within the 2 weeks.
Okay, the only other thing I think we talked about was putting the increase of the surcharge for this Community Preservation Act on the fall town meeting warrant. It's not likely to happen at this point, given the litigation that we're embroiled in, and there's been no citizens group put together yet to start, getting information out and gathering support for that position. So I don't think even if we have a town meeting that will be on the warrant, so.
Peter, the other thing I just wanted to mention is that we've asked the fire union to take a ratification vote prior to our next board meeting, prior to August 8th, so we'll know if they ratified or not.
FinCom's in the past, and I've stated my support for holding this town meeting, particularly and mostly because of the Smurray issue and the ratifying the agreement with the fire union. Have we talked, so the chair or liaison talked to FinCom more recently about kind of what we're thinking about putting on here now that we have a little bit more update? I know they have expressed some concerns in the past about special town meetings.
I did. We had a meeting with Margaret and Amy to talk about the 3-board meeting, and I did mention this and said that there, particularly the fire contract. Right. That's a $300,000 extra income that the town would get, as I understand it, in fiscal 18, if we could get that ratified and notify the current ambulance company that we're no longer going to use them. To me, that's, a fiscal incentive to put that on the agenda. So that I talked to her about. Okay. I actually am going to be I have some time on the agenda of FinCom Tuesday, so Janet and I could talk to them more about it then also.
But I think one of their concerns, especially when we had so many specials last year, and that's why I'm suggesting, we have criteria that in essence focuses on timeliness, right. That if in fact we didn't do something right now, right, we would lose an opportunity, and I think maybe that may make them feel a little better.
At their last meeting, they're meeting again, I think, tomorrow, because I'm going to miss another night of the convention, but I did address the fact that we're, don't assume that we're having it. We haven't decided yet, but these are the things that are likely to be on it. And I did say that it wasn't clear that the surcharge issue was going to be on it because of other things that were going on, and plus it's, involves money, so it might be better on the annual town meeting anyway. But, so they are aware, everybody's aware that there's something potentially going to happen in the fall. So if I understand correctly, you're talking about not closing the warrant until September? No. Or October 8th, because August 8th, yeah, our next meeting, right? Okay, because that was my understanding all along, that was what we were going to do, because by that time we know more things, so, okay.
Just so I understand, that's just citizens petitions, right? It still allows us to add articles right up to September 19th we're talking about.
But I think...
Something came up out of the blue. That
Right,
we
but I
needed
think
to-
once again, we'd have to look at it from a timeliness point of view, because I think that's one of the things FinCom checks too, is as things get added on, and maybe they could have waited, you know.
Okay, so we don't need to take any action on this item tonight. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to be here because I'm going to be away on vacation for August 8th, but my personal feeling is that if we have the fire contract ratified by then we should have a special fall town meeting, because it means 300 grand more income in 2018.
I would like to see, well, Nina's here, I'm hoping that we can get enough movement on the process that the town's going through with all the discussions with the Hadley Lagoon property, the Piper Lane property. I'm hoping that we can open space and everybody will keep that on their radar, because every town meeting for the last 3 or 4 town meetings, I've always held out hope that we would actually be able to find some movement on that. So I just wanted to publicly sort of say that I'm hoping everybody's thinking about that and working toward that.
Problem with that one is that then, even if there was an agreement, an issue of timeliness, like the other land purchases, they're not going to wait until April town meeting, but I don't know that that's true with Hadley Lagoon. So even if we were able to come to an agreement or move forward on it, again, the point of setting these criteria was we would only deal with issues of timeliness, especially for things that have financial implications of we're purchasing something, because that's where FinCom got particularly.
I mean, the other properties saying they want to go through, but I know that it's been a hardship for the owners of that property that it's taken so long to.
There's a difference between whether it's a hardship on somebody else, because that's frankly not our job as a town, or our job as stewards of the Board of Selectmen to solve that, versus if we're going to lose an extremely valuable property.
Well, that's what I actually wonder about this. I mean, there keep being discussions with other developers and other things that could happen to it. So just because one property says, I really want to make this happen, I don't think we should necessarily ignore another property.
Janet, do you have something you wanted to say?
Well, my sense with that property is there's, some distance between what the owner wants and what, perhaps would be reasonable to the town. I think.
They're actually not.
Because I haven't heard any discussion about it, whereas I have been hearing about the other property, that, because it's been on some people's radars for quite a while, and there have been plans. Yeah.
At Open Space, we've been discussing both of them for a long time.
I mean, I think if everybody's going to be here on the 8th, I've said my piece about if it was just a fire contract. I think I would be in favor of holding a special fall town meeting. But, we should wait to see where we are on the 8th, and everybody else can weigh in. And on that point, I won't be here to vote, but that's the way I feel anyway, for the record. So. Okay. Then moving on to the consent agenda. Item number 7, committee appointment, Cameron Cousins, 348, 364 Main Street Master Plan Special Committee, the Green Advisory Board member. Number 8, committee appointment of Anthony Victor, a full member to the Sidewalk Committee. Number 9, committee appointment Steve Lowe, full member of Green Advisory Board. Number 10, the meeting minutes of June 15, 2016 and July 11, 2016. Number 11, carry-in permit for Oswaldo Filho at Filho's Great Road Incorporated, former Bella Familia. Number 12, Eagle Scout Court of Honor, Jacob E. Crowley, on September 5th. Chin Sung Chang is assigned that. Number 13, Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Maximilian Stout, James Gong, and David Schottler on August 13, 2016, and Selectwoman Osmond is assigned that one. 14 is a one-day alcoholic beverage license for Allison Melanson, September 25th, 2016 at Narrow Park. 15 is accept a gift for the Recreation Department. Selectmen to accept a gift totaling $1,195 on behalf of the Swati Sinha family to purchase a bench for Nara Park. 16 is a request for waiver of fees to the Recreation Department. The Selectmen to approve a waiver of fees with the exception of out-of-pocket expenses for Bridge to Turkey fundraising race, September 11, 2016 at Nara Park. Number 17 is request to dispose of obsolete materials, Acton Memorial Library. Number 18, sewer privilege fee calculation, 282 Main Street. Nothing being pulled, so take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
Could I just say, I think that's really nice of that family whose family member spent so much time, the whole time they were living there at Nara, that they're donating this bench.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Nothing further on the agenda. I hear a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Thank you.